Chapter 1092. 1092 Joining the Imperial Dragon Guard. The next morning, Lu Ming headed for the registration area for the Imperial Dragon Guards. When he arrived, he was shocked to see that there was already a long line at the registration area. To some of the smaller powers, the Imperial Dragon Guards was a good job. Joining the Imperial Dragon Guards was equivalent to joining the ancient Saint dynasty, and they would be able to obtain more cultivation resources. Those below the spirit embryo realm, hurry up and leave. We don't need those below the spirit embryo realm. At the registration area, there were a few burly men dressed in long purple robes embroidered with flood dragons. These were the Imperial Dragon Guards. Their auras were very strong. Lu Ming swept his gaze across them and realized that they were all at the 7th level spirit embryo realm or above. There was also an old man sitting at the side, resting with his eyes closed. He was also wearing the clothes of the Imperial Dragon Guards, but his aura was unfathomable. Of course, it could not hide from Lu Ming's senses. Lu Ming discovered that this person was an existence at the 1st level of the spiritual god realm. Only those at the spirit embryo realm and above can join. The requirements are too high. Let's go. Some people sighed, shook their heads, and walked away. Take out your identification and report your information. We will go and verify it. After that, there will be a test. Because there is a limit to the number of Imperial Dragon Guards that can be recruited this time, there are too many people who have registered. We can't take in all of them. Only the strong can stay. All right, the registration begins now, a burly man said. Then, they started to register one by one. Lu Ming waited patiently for a full 2 hours before it was his turn. Lu Ming moved his hand and an identity token appeared. He handed it to one of the Imperial Dragon Guards. This identity token was taken from Ming Lu. It was the identity token of the Black Spear Sect's disciple. Black Spear Sect, clear path. Lu Ming said. The burly Imperial Dragon Guard checked his identity medallion and registered it. We'll send people to verify your identity. If there's any faucet in it, you'll be killed on the spot. Do you understand? The brawny Imperial Dragon Guard's eyes were cold. Yes, I know. Lu Ming nodded continuously. Yes, wait over there. There will be an assessment later, the brawny Imperial Dragon Guard said. Lu Ming walked to the side and waited patiently. After another 2 hours, the registration ended. There were more than 2,000 people who had signed up. All right, come with me. At this moment, the spiritual god realm elder stood up and said indifferently. He then strode inside with Lu Ming and the rest following behind. Soon, they arrived at a military camp. There was a huge stone tablet in the middle of the camp. This stone tablet can test your cultivation. You just have to channel your true chi into the stone tablet and we will know your cultivation. There are 2,000 people who have registered this time, but we only want 200 people. Therefore, we will only accept those whose cultivation ranks are in the top 200. Now, the assessment begins, the old man announced. After that, the applicants went up to take the test one by one. As long as one put their true essence into the stone tablet would light up. Through the light, one could tell their cultivation level. He started testing them one by one. Lu Ming realized that many of them had a cultivation of the 1st level spirit embryo realm. There were a lot fewer 2nd level spirit embryo realm cultivators and even fewer 3rd level spirit embryo realm cultivators. Very soon, it was Lu Ming's turn. Just in case, I'd better input a little more true chi, Lu Ming thought to himself. He was only taking in 200 people. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, Lu Ming planned to input more essential core. He walked to the stone tablet and pressed his hand on it. Lu Ming channeled his essential core. Buzz. The stone tablet shook, and 7 Silivera lights flashed. Enough. Lu Ming kept his essential core. 7 Silivera rays of light represented the cultivation of the 7th level of the spirit embryo realm. This way, it should be foolproof and he would definitely be accepted. 7th level spirit embryo realm. The spiritual god realm elder's eyes lit up. Those who came to sign up were usually people from small forces, and their cultivation levels were not too high. Those who had too high a cultivation level would not join the Imperial Dragon Guards, and there were not many who had reached the 7th level of the spiritual embryo realm. Not bad. The spiritual god realm elder nodded. The test continued. Not long after, the test was completed. Lu Ming discovered that there were only 3 people who had reached the 7th level spirit embryo realm and only 1 person who had reached the 8th level. There was no one who could go higher. This made Lu Ming touch his nose. Was his performance too outstanding? Alright, the test is over. The top 200 will stay in the military camp for the time being and wait for our news in a few days. The spirit god elder ordered. Those who were not in the top 200 could only sigh and leave. Lu Ming and the group were led to their rooms. For the next few days, Lu Ming stayed in the military camp. He cultivated while waiting for news. 3 days later, the news came that Lu Ming had been recruited and had officially become a member of the Imperial Dragon Guards. The 4 of you are very good. I have temporarily arranged the positions of deputy flag for you. If you perform well in the future, it will not be a problem for you to be promoted. Also, the positions you need to guard have been arranged. Someone will inform you in a moment. After the spirit god elder finished his announcement, he gave each of them a token that represented the secondary flag. The flag in the Imperial Dragon Guard meant an official position. One banner had 500 people. The main banner could command 500 Imperial Dragon Guards, and the deputy banner was not small either. This was because their cultivation was profound. No matter where they were, strength was everything. Not long after, someone sent Lu Ming the Imperial Dragon Guard's robe and the news that they would be guarding the position. The 4 of them were naturally separated. The 8th Prince's guards. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. His temporary duty was to be the 8th Prince's guard. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with a strange look. From what he knew, the 8th Prince was Xie Zhen. Wasn't Xie Zhen the one who took Xie Nianqing away from 9 dragons? What a coincidence. I just happened to ask Xie Zhen about little Qing. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. There were 200 people who had joined them, but there were more than 30 people who were grouped with Lu Ming. They were all the 8th Prince's guards. Soon after, a skinny man in his 40s came to Lu Ming and the rest. I am your commander. My name is Shifang. From now on, you will follow me. Now, follow me to the 8th Prince's mansion. The scrawny man swept his gaze across them, especially Lu Ming, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. This Shifang seems to be hostile to me, but this is the first time I've seen him. Strange. Lu Ming frowned slightly and thought to himself. The 8th Prince's mansion was in the inner city. It was very wide, like a villa, and it was 100 miles wide. These Imperial Dragon Guards couldn't directly enter the 8th Prince's residence, so they stayed in a military camp outside the residence. In the military camp outside the 8th Prince's residence, Lu Ming and the others gathered. Shifang stood on the platform and looked down on everyone with a cold expression. I'll tell you some things right now. The first and foremost order of the Imperial Dragon Guard is to obey orders and protect the safety of the Imperial family with your lives. Also, let me tell you, the Imperial Dragon Guard is full of experts. Don't be so proud of your strength. There are many more in the Imperial Dragon Guard who are stronger than you. Any one of them can easily suppress you. Do you understand? After saying that, Shifang's gaze swept across Lu Ming. Chapter 1093. 1093 Chapter 1093 Collecting Fees. Lu Ming frowned. He had a feeling that Shifang's words were directed at him. However, he had never met Shifang before. Why was he targeting him? Could it be that this Ming Lu had offended Shifang before? Lu Ming thought to himself. After Shifang finished speaking, he turned around and left. Then, someone arranged their accommodation. Lu Ming was the deputy flag bearer and he had a small courtyard. There was another person who lived in Lu Ming's courtyard and helped him. This person was also a newly joined Imperial Dragon Guard. He looked to be in his 50s and was quite shrewd. His name was Sun Lin. Lord Vice Commander, you have to be careful. Sun Lin reminded them as they arrived at the courtyard. Oh, what do you mean by that? Lu Ming asked. Deputy Commander, You should be able to feel that General Shi's words are actually meant for you. Sun Lin said. Oh, do you know why? Lu Ming asked. He was also very curious. Vice Banner Lord has just arrived, so you probably don't know the rules of the Imperial Dragon Guard. In the Imperial Dragon Guard, everything is decided by strength. Those who are strong, as long as they make a contribution, can be promoted. Deputy Sir, your cultivation is at the 7th level Spirit Embryo Realm, while General Shi Fang's cultivation is only at the 6th level Spirit Embryo Realm. Your cultivation is higher than his. Upon hearing this, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. You mean, Shi Fang is worried that I will threaten his position? Vice Commander is wise. The reason why Shi Fang was able to get the position of the Chief Commander was because he had an elder brother who was the personal bodyguard of His Highness, the 8th Prince. That's why he was able to get the position of the Chief Commander and command 500 Imperial Dragon Guards. Moreover, the highest person in this banner was only at the 6th level of the Spirit Embryo Realm, so Shi Fang was able to hold the position of the Chief Commander very steadily. However, Vice Commander's cultivation is higher than his. As long as Vice Commander makes some contributions, it would be very normal for him to surpass Shi Fang and even replace him. Of course, Shi Fang won't be nice to you. He might even do something to you in secret. Sun Lin explained. Lu Ming smiled. So that was the case. However, he didn't take it to heart. Shi Fang was just a mere Shi Fang. He could suppress him with one finger. There was no need to take it to heart. After chatting for a while, Lu Ming walked into the room and sat down cross-legged to begin comprehending the essence realm of heaven and earth. Previously, in the secret realm of the Saint Mansion, Lu Ming had devoured many intent runes of powerful cultivators. Not only had he achieved a breakthrough in his cultivation, but he had also made progress in the intent of heaven and earth. His thunder mentality and wind mentality had broken through to the 4th level lower tier respectively. With the addition of his fire mentality, 3 of his mentalities had already reached the 4th level lower tier. Now, he was fully focused on comprehending the earth mentality and the water mentality. There was nothing much for the first 2 days. The Imperial Dragon Guards were usually very free when they had nothing to do. After all, they were all martial artists. They didn't need to patrol like ordinary people. When they had nothing to do, they just needed to cultivate in peace. They would only be dispatched when there was an emergency. On the evening of the 3rd day, Lu Ming heard some movements outside. He ended his cultivation, opened the door, and walked out. In the courtyard, there were 2 people. One was Sun Lin, and the other was a skinny middle-aged man. At this moment, Sun Lin took out a storage ring and handed it to the skinny middle-aged man. The skinny monk-like middle-aged man took the storage ring. When he saw Lu Ming, he chuckled and walked over to him. You're Ming Lu? Not bad. Lu Ming said. I was just about to look for you. Since you have joined the Imperial Dragon Guard, General Shi Fang will take care of you in the future, allowing you to reap the greatest benefits and lead a good life. However, General Shi Fang can't work for free. You have to show some appreciation, understand? The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man stretched out his hand and pinched his fingers. He then chuckled. The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled up. He understood now. It turned out that this skinny monkey was sent by Shi Fang to collect benefits. Needless to say, every new member would be patronized. He was really greedy. Tell me, how much do you want? Lu Ming said. You're the deputy. You have a higher position, so of course, you have to pay more. The others are worth 50,000 raw stones, so you can just give them 200,000. Skinny monkey chuckled. 50,000? 200,000? The smile at the corners of Lu Ming's mouth grew wider. That was really ruthless. An average person would need 50,000 origin stones. To an ordinary spirit embryo realm martial artist, this was definitely a huge burden. And to him, he asked for 200,000. This was 200,000 raw gemstones. It was not a small amount, and it was difficult for a normal spirit embryo realm to take it out. It was a lion's mouth. Unfortunately, I don't have that many raw gemstones. Please leave. Lu Ming said indifferently. No. Don't try to fool me. You're a 7th level spirit embryo realm martial artist. Do you really think that you don't have 200,000 yuan in your entire fortune? The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man sneered. Oh, even if I have 200,000 yuan, if I give it all to you, what will I use to cultivate? Lu Ming said. I don't care about this. It's your own business. If you can't take it out, you'd better get out of the Imperial Dragon Guard as soon as possible. Otherwise, without the protection of the chief commander, you won't even know how you died in the future. The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man's face was gloomy as he threatened. Hee hee. Lu Ming was so angry that he laughed and said, I need Shifang's protection. What a joke. All right, get lost now, or I'll throw you out. How dare you laugh at the chief commander? You're so bold. You're looking for death. The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man shouted. Get lost. You're courting death. Lu Ming bellowed and took a step forward. His terrifying aura exploded and pressed down on the skinny monkey-like middle-aged man. The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man trembled as if he had been struck by lightning. He took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. Ming, just you wait, you're dead. The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man ran out with a face full of resentment. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Vice Commander, if you offend him like this, I'm afraid Shifang will come later. Sigh. Sun Lin sighed, a little worried. He's just a clown, what's there to be afraid of? Lu Ming said casually. Shifang is fine. However, his elder brother is the 8th Prince's personal bodyguard, a first-level spiritual god realm expert. Sun Lin said, a hint of fear in his eyes. If a spiritual god realm master wanted to kill them, it would be no different from killing an ant. Oh, Lu Ming replied indifferently. He looked calm and sat down on a stone bench in the courtyard casually as if nothing had happened. Sun Lin was full of worry. After a while, boom. The door to the courtyard was blasted open. Shifang walked in with a few trusted aides, his face dark. Minglu, you injured the other Imperial Dragon Guards for no reason. I suspect you have ulterior motives. Why aren't you obediently kneeling down to accept your punishment? Shifang shouted loudly, directly pinning a crime on Lu Ming. Lu Ming glanced at Shifang indifferently and said, what an idiot. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to get lost. How dare you? You dare to offend your superior, and your crime will be doubled. Your cultivation will be crippled, and you will be expelled from the Imperial Dragon Guard. Shifang shouted. Hee hee, Shifang, why don't you try? Lu Ming smiled faintly. Chapter 1094. 1094 Get out of here. Tempage, you still dare to resist? Shifang said in a deep voice. He did not believe that Lu Ming would dare to resist. Shifang's elder brother was a first-level spiritual god realm expert and the 8th Prince's personal guard. If Lu Ming dared to lay a hand on him, he would be courting death. Moreover, he had learned a rather powerful martial arts technique from his brother. He was also quite talented. Even if Lu Ming's cultivation was 1 level higher than his, he was not afraid to fight him. Lu Ming did not answer Shifang. Instead, he stood up and walked toward Shifang. 3 breaths have passed. It seems like I have to do it myself and throw you out. How dare you? You really dare to attack me? Everyone, let's attack together and suppress this person. Die! Shifang shouted angrily. His aura burst out and he charged at Lu Ming. Besides Shifang, the other 3 also made their moves. Their auras erupted, and they were actually all at the 6th level spirit embryo realm. These few people were the strongest in this banner, and they usually followed Shifang's lead. The 4 of them joined forces and their momentum was not weak. However, in Lu Ming's eyes, they were no different from children playing house. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming kicked. The moment this kick was kicked, it turned into 4 leg shadows. Bang! 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 All the attacks of Shifang and the other 3 turned into bubbles under Lu Ming's feet. The soles of Lu Ming's feet were imprinted on their faces. With 4 screams, Shifang and the other 3 were sent flying out of the yard like 4 cannonballs. Their screams echoed in the night sky, and then they flew further and further away. There was still the skinny monkey-like middle-aged man who hadn't left. At this moment, his eyes were almost popping out of their sockets. His entire body was trembling non-stop, and his face was pale. He was scared. He did not expect Lu Ming to be so bold that he even dared to hit Shifang. Most importantly, he did not expect that Lu Ming not only dared to fight, but his combat strength was also so strong. He sent Shifang and the other three flying with one kick. Although Lu Ming's cultivation was one level higher than Shifang's group of 4, Shifang's group had 4 people, yet they were unable to put up any resistance. It could be seen that Lu Ming's combat strength was stronger than an ordinary 7th level spirit embryo realm. At this moment, he looked at Lu Ming in fear. Get lost. Lu Ming berated. Yes, I'll get lost now. The skinny monk-like middle-aged man turned around and was about to leave. I told you to get lost, not to leave, Lu Ming said coldly. The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man's face was pale. It seems like I have to do it myself. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. Don't. The skinny monkey-like middle-aged man was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He could only lie on the ground in humiliation and roll out of the courtyard. Then, he got up and ran away. Vice Commander, I'm afraid he won't let you off the hook for offending Shifang. Sun Lin was full of worry. He was not worried about Lu Ming. He was afraid that he would be implicated by Lu Ming. What are you afraid of? Lu Ming said casually and went back to his room to cultivate. With a wave of his hand, many bottles, jade boxes, and iron boxes appeared in the room. There were more than 100 of them, all of which he had obtained from the Saint Mansion in the secret realm. Lu Ming did not check it previously. Now was the perfect time to check it. This is a spirit refining pill. Lu Ming was overjoyed when he saw the jade bottles. Those jade bottles were actually spirit refining pills. The spirit refining pill was made from the main ingredients of the spirit refining fruit. If it was frequently consumed by a perfected spirit embryo, it could greatly increase the chances of breaking through to the spirit god realm. If a spirit god powerhouse consumed it, it could condense the spirit god and strengthen their spiritual consciousness. There were dozens of jade bottles here, all of which were filled with spirit refining pills. There were 9 pills in each jade bottle, and there were at least a few hundred spirit refining pills in there. Following that, Lu Ming looked at other things. Many of the others were elixirs, very precious elixirs, and most of them were not inferior to the spirit refining elixir. There were also various precious materials that Lu Ming could not name. He kept them away. Finally, with a thought, a small fiery red pagoda appeared. An emperor spiritual weapon. As soon as the fiery red tower appeared, it trembled slightly as if it was about to leave. However, Lu Ming's essential core spread out and enveloped the small tower. If I refine an emperor weapon, it will definitely increase my strength. However, it won't be that easy. With my current cultivation, even if I refine it, I won't be able to unleash much of its power. I'll wait until I have some free time to refine it. At the thought of this, Lu Ming kept the small pagoda. Then, he took out the spirit refinement elixir and refined it to condense his spirit soul. Time slowly passed. Tonight, there was no movement. The next day, during the day, there was also no movement. On the second night, Lu Ming made his move. He asked Dandan to inscribe an array that could conceal his aura for him, and his body cut through the void like a ghost, heading towards the 8th Prince Xiezhen's mansion. Lu Ming planned to enter Xiezhen's residence to see if he could find out anything about Xian Yanqing. The 8th Prince's residence was naturally guarded by the Imperial Dragon Guards. However, with Lu Ming's current cultivation and the aura-concealing formation that he had set up, the Imperial Dragon Guards could not detect him at all. The 8th Prince's mansion was huge, with many palaces and pavilions. Lu Ming spread out his spiritual sense to check his surroundings. After a while, his eyes lit up. He moved and appeared above a palace. He scanned the area with his spiritual sense, and the situation below the palace was imprinted in his mind. It was clearer than what he could see with his eyes. This was the wonder of spiritual sense. Below, in a room, 2 figures were discussing something. One of them was Shifang, and the other was in his 50s. He was burly and looked quite dignified. "Big brother, you have to avenge me." That new deputy is so arrogant that he even dared to hit me. He's obviously not giving you face. Shifang cried. This burly man in his 50s was the 8th prince's personal bodyguard, a first-level spiritual god realm expert. However, Lu Ming's current cultivation was at the 2nd level of the spiritual god realm. The spiritual god he cultivated was very powerful, and his spiritual consciousness was powerful. How could the other party discover him? Alright, I know about this. This Ming Lu is really bold. However, I'm a spiritual god realm expert and the 8th prince's personal guard. If I attack him directly, I'm afraid I will be criticized by the others. How about this? I have a way to get rid of him. Having said that, Shifang's elder brother began to use voice transmission. Lu Ming could not hear the rest. Hehe, I'd like to see how you're going to get rid of me. Lu Ming sneered. Then, he left the place in search of the 8th prince's residence. Not long after, Lu Ming finally found the 8th prince in the depths of the mansion. The 8th prince was indeed Xiezhen. After not seeing him for a few years, Xiezhen had matured a little, and his cultivation had also become much stronger. At this moment, Xiezhen was high up in the air, sitting on top of a large hall. Below him, a few people were kneeling there, reporting to him. Bang! Xiezhen suddenly slammed the table and shouted coldly, "What? They failed again, what a bunch of trash." 8th prince, although the 16th princess is in the Abyss Demon realm, her talent is too high, and her cultivation progress is too terrifying. All the people we sent were killed by her, one of them answered. Chapter 1095. 1095 News of Xian Yanqing. The 16th princess. Little Qing. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and his eyes suddenly revealed a cold killing intent. From what he had just said, Xian Yanqing was in the demon realm. Moreover, Xiezhen had sent people to kill him. At that moment, Lu Ming's killing intent was extremely strong. However, he felt as if a huge rock had been lifted off his chest. At least, Xian Yanqing was fine and alive. Humph, I really don't know what my father is thinking. She's an alien, a bitch born of a lowly servant. My father didn't kill her directly or suppress her in the demonic flames of the Abyss Demon realm, but just imprisoned her in the Abyss Demon realm and let her fight with the demonic creatures. She's really lucky. Xiezhen's face was dark and his voice was cold. 8th prince, what should we do next? One of them asked. This bitch hates me to the bone. If I let her live, I'll always feel uneasy, Xiezhen said with a cold face. 8th prince, in my opinion, you don't need to worry too much. His Majesty the Sage Emperor didn't kill her, most likely because of the father-daughter relationship. However, the 16th princess is a rare species, after all, and is a great taboo for our Sage Emperor clan. Even if His Majesty didn't kill her, he wouldn't let her out of the Abyss Demon realm. She will most likely spend her life in the Abyss Demon realm. Below, a person said. That may be the case, but this bitch's talent is really too high. As long as she's not dead, I can't rest at ease, Xiezhen said with a dark expression. 8th prince, should we continue to send more people? Let's wait for a while. The 1,000,000-year national sacrifice will be held in less than 2 months. During this period, my father has not been in secluded cultivation and is paying attention to the big and small matters. It's not a good time to make a move. After the 1,000,000-year national sacrifice, we'll send experts into the demon realm and kill him in one fell swoop. Xiezhen's eyes were sinister. Creak. Lu Ming clenched his fists tightly. He almost could not control the killing intent in his body. Who is it? However, it only leaked out a little bit and was sensed by an expert. Buzz. Lu Ming's figure moved and he left the place. In an instant, he appeared 100 miles away and returned to the dormitory. He really wanted to slap Xiezhen to death, but he knew that it wasn't the time yet. He had to find the entrance to the demon realm and save Xian Yanqing. If he killed Xiezhen now, he would definitely alert the enemy. Now, he could only let Xiezhen live for a while longer. However, Lu Ming swore that he would kill Xiezhen sooner or later. From then on, Lu Ming would find time to wander around every day and try to find out more about the Abyss Demon territory. Unfortunately, he found nothing. It seemed that very few people knew about the Abyss demon territory. Lu Ming guessed that the Tartarian demonic realm was most likely a plane or a secret realm. The entrance was most likely somewhere in the palace. On the other hand, other than going out to inquire, Lu Ming would be refining the spirit refinement pill and comprehending the intent realm. The divine refinement pill could not directly increase Lu Ming's cultivation level. However, it could make the spiritual god more condensed and the spiritual sense would become stronger. The stronger the spiritual god was, the more beneficial it would be for his future cultivation. 3 days later, Lu Ming was cultivating when Shifang came again. Lu Ming walked out of the room and looked at Shifang indifferently. "What's wrong? You want to get beaten up again?" "Me." Shifang's face turned ugly. He snorted and said, "I'm here to inform you that there's a mission. The 8th prince is going to the Beast Mountain to hunt. We need to go together. Let's go." "All right." Lu Ming smiled and strode outside. Shifang looked at Lu Ming's back and a cold smile appeared at the corners of his lips. The Imperial Dragon Guards gathered and followed Xiezhen, heading towards Beast Cry Mountain. Beast Cry Mountain was a boundless mountain range. Countless ferocious beasts lived in it. It was a hunting ground for the royal family, and it was specially used for the Xie family's descendants to train their cultivation. The disciples of the Xie family would often come to the Beast Cry Mountain to hunt. In fact, they would enter the Beast Cry Mountain to fight with ferocious beasts. There was a huge military camp outside the Beast Cry Mountain. There were residences and guards. "Shifang, you lead the Imperial Dragon Guards and follow me into the mountains, but you don't have to protect me. You guys split up and hunt, and we'll compete to see who can kill more and stronger fierce beasts. How about it?" Looking at the Beast Cry Mountain, Xiezhen was in high spirits. "8th Prince, how can we be compared to you?" Shifang smiled. "It's fine. There are also experts in the Imperial Dragon Guards. Try your best to compete with the Half-Prince, and I will reward those who perform well." Xiezhen laughed. "All right, I'll bring them along." Shifang bowed. "Then let's go." With a wave of his hand, Xiezhen led the way and flew towards Beast Cry Mountain. Shifang and the others also flew towards Beast Cry Mountain. "Could it be that you want to get rid of me in Beast Cry Mountain?" Lu Ming thought in his heart. He guessed that Shifang's big brother might attack him at the Beast Cry Mountain. Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. If the other party was looking for death, he did not mind giving them a ride. After flying into Beast Cry Mountain, the group dispersed. Lu Ming flew towards the depths of the Beast Cry Mountain, feeling a little bored. The ferocious beasts in the outer area of Beast Cry Mountain were of a very low level. When some king-level and spirit sea-level ferocious beasts saw Lu Ming, they would run away without a trace with just a glare from him. After half an hour, no one made a move. "Still not moving?" Lu Ming muttered. He sat cross-legged on an obvious boulder and waited. After 2 hours, no one made a move on him. "It seems like I was wrong. They won't fight here." Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He was a little surprised. "Forget it. I guess Xiezhen's hunting is about to end. I'll just kill a few to deal with it." Lu Ming's figure flashed and he soared into the sky. Gah! Gah! After a while, screeches were heard and a group of Silivera eagles flew past. As soon as they saw Lu Ming, more than 10 of them screeched and pounced on him. "It's you guys." Lu Ming flicked his fingers and long spears were formed, shooting at the Silivera condor. Phut! 5 of the Silivera eagles were pierced by the spear radiance. The remaining eagles screeched in fear and fled. Lu Ming did not pursue them. He used his vital essence to carry the 5 eagles and flew back to the military camp. These 5 eagles were equivalent to the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm, which was more or less enough. In the military camp, Xiezhen and the others had already returned. On the ground of the military camp, there were ferocious beasts of various shapes and sizes. "The 8th Prince is really amazing. In just a few hours, you actually killed 3 8th level spirit embryo realm and 3 7th level spirit embryo realm beasts. The 8th Prince is indeed a heaven-bestowed genius. This lowly one is impress." Shifang stood in front of Xiezhen and flattered him. "This is nothing. You guys can cultivate well," Xiezhen said humbly, but the pride on his face could not be hidden. His cultivation was at the 6th level of the spirit embryo realm, and it was a pretty good achievement to be able to hunt 3 8th and 7th level spirit embryo realm beasts in less than 3 hours in the vast Beast Cry Mountain. Hey! All of a sudden, Shifang's gaze turned to the horizon and he saw Lu Ming flying back, dragging 5 Silivera eagles behind him. Chapter 1096. 1096 The reason to take action. He threw the 5 eagles to the ground, causing the ground to shake slightly. This is a Silivera condor, all 5 of them are Silivera condors, so powerful. Moreover, 5 Silivera condors of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. Ming Ziki is actually so powerful that he could actually hunt 5 Silivera condors of the 8th level spirit embryo realm in less than 3 hours. It's really amazing. Lu Ming's return caused a wave of exclamations. The Imperial Dragon Guards at the scene were in a heated discussion. Although Lu Ming had only killed 5 demonic beasts, they were all at the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. In terms of value, they had already surpassed Xiezhen. This made Xiezhen's face turn gloomy. Besides Xiezhen, Shifang's older brother sneered. General Shifang, who is this? Xiezhen asked. 8th Prince, this is the new deputy flag. He's called Ming Lu and has a cultivation of the 7th level spirit embryo realm. Shifang answered. Oh, so it's the new vice flag bearer. Xiezhen's gaze shifted to Lu Ming. When he saw that Lu Ming had only casually cupped his fists at him without a trace of respect, he felt even more displeased. Xiezhen strode towards Lu Ming and said, Sub-Banner Ming's combat power is amazing. I admire you. Half-princes like people with strong combat power. Sub-Banner Ming, I'm itching to fight. How about you fight with me? A battle? The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled up slightly. That's right. Fight with me. Use all your strength and don't hold back. Don't worry, you can't hurt me. Bang. As Xiezhen spoke, he slowly walked up. His body emitted an intense golden light, and his aura grew. He had awakened a 5th level divine level bloodline, so his combat power was very strong. Ordinary 7th level spirit embryo realm martial artists were no match for him at all, so he was full of confidence. At the side, the others scattered far away. Shifang and his brother looked at each other and sneered. Make your move. Boom. Xiezhen threw a punch at Lu Ming. A golden fist ray howled through the sky and headed straight for Lu Ming. A long spear was condensed in Lu Ming's hands. He came from the Black Spear sect and he used a long spear. Buzz. With a shake of the spear, the tip of the spear trembled, stirring up the wind and clouds as it pierced towards Xiezhen's fist radiance. Bang. Xiezhen's fist radiance was pierced by the spear and collapsed. What? Xiezhen's eyes narrowed, and a hint of killing intent flashed in them. Boom. Boom. Following that, the golden light on Xiezhen's body grew even more intense as he continuously punched out. Endless golden light boiled and enveloped Lu Ming. Lu Ming's spear trembled, creating spear flowers that bloomed in the air. Bang. Bang. A dense collision sounded, and the fist radiance and spear flower disappeared without a trace. Back in 9 Dragons, Xiezhen's cultivation had been at the peak of the 7th level of the spiritual ocean tier. Now that more than 3 years had passed, and Xiezhen was in the ancient Saint dynasty, he definitely had a lot of resources. His cultivation had risen to the 6th level of the spirit embryo realm, and his combat strength was indeed not bad. Ordinary 8th level spirit embryo realm cultivators were no match for him and would be killed by him. However, he was facing Lu Ming, who was trying his best to suppress his power. After dozens of moves, he still could not take down Lu Ming. Killing intent flashed in Xiezhen's eyes. A 100-meter tall burly man in golden armor appeared above his head. He held a long spear and had 5 golden chakras shining, making him look like a god. Xiezhen turned into a ray of light and entered the body of the golden-armored man. Kill. The burly man in golden armor bellowed. The golden spear in his hand emitted a dazzling light as he stabbed toward Lu Ming. The huge spear whistled through the air with terrifying might. What a strong killing intent. He wants to kill me. A cold glint flashed across Lu Ming's eyes. If not for the fact that he was worried about alerting the enemy, he would have killed Xiezhen right away. Boom. Lu Ming took a step forward and his body soared into the sky. The spear's radiance that was condensed in his hand grew rapidly. It became 100 meters long and 10 meters wide. He swept the spear at the burly man in golden armor. Boom! The two spears collided, and the entire camp shook. The burly man in golden armor trembled and was forced to retreat by Lu Ming's spear. Buzz! Lu Ming rushed over directly. The huge long spear smashed down fiercely from top to bottom with the force that could split a mountain. Boom! The long spear hit the burly man in golden armor heavily, causing his body to shake violently and he almost fell to the ground. Then, Lu Ming changed the momentum of his spear to a horizontal sweep, which landed heavily on the burly man in golden armor. The burly man in golden armor let out a blood-curdling screech as his body crumbled and transformed back into Xie appearance. He spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. "How dare you injure the 8th prince? You're courting death." Bang! Shi Fang's elder brother, Shi Zheng, took a step forward and appeared in front of Lu Ming. The aura of the first level of the spiritual god realm burst out from his body. A terrifying pressure filled the air above the military camp. Many people's faces changed drastically. The pressure of the spiritual god realm was too strong. Many people trembled and broke out in cold sweat. However, Lu Ming was as calm as a Buddha's face. He did not feel anything at all. He glanced at Shi Zheng casually and said, "The 8th prince just told me to use my full strength. I'm just following the 8th prince's order. You still dare to quibble? The 8th prince is a precious and noble man, and you actually dared to injure him. You have no respect for your superiors, and you deserve to die 1,000 times. I'll cripple you now and lock you in the heavenly prison to reflect on your actions." Shi Zheng's eyes were cold, and a sneer hung on the corner of his mouth. At the side, Shi Fang was even more smug. He glared at Lu Ming fiercely. Behind Shi Zheng, Xie Zhen's expression was dark and ugly, but he did not stop Shi Zheng. As Shi Zheng had said, Lu Ming actually dared to injure him. He deserved to die. Ha ha ha, this is ridiculous. The 8th prince personally ordered me to use my full strength. I was just following the order and accidentally injured the 8th prince, but you still want to attack me. Who will listen to him in the future? Lu Ming laughed heartily, not feeling the slightest bit of fear. He finally understood that this was all Shi Zheng's scheme. Shi Zheng understood Xie Zhen very well and knew that Xie Zhen was narrow-minded. If Lu Ming were to compete with Xie Zhen and win or even injure Xie Zhen, he would definitely die. Even if Lu Ming did not kill more ferocious beasts than Xie Zhen, Shi Zheng would still find a way to let the 8th prince spar with Lu Ming. Today, everything was going more smoothly than Shi Zheng had expected. The number of ferocious beasts that Lu Ming had killed had actually surpassed Xie Zhen's. This made Xie Zhen unhappy with Lu Ming and he wanted to fight Lu Ming directly. There was no better outcome than this. Before the battle began, Xie Zhen had already harbored the intention to kill Lu Ming. If Lu Ming's combat strength was not up to par and he was not a match for Xie Zhen, he would most likely be killed on the spot. If Lu Ming's cultivation level and combat strength were higher than Xie Zhen's, then Xie Zhen's killing intent would definitely be stronger and Lu Ming would be dead. Therefore, regardless of whether Lu Ming won or lost, he was dead. Audacious. Impudent. Who do you think you are? You're insulting the 8th prince. Your entire family should be executed. Shi Fang shouted from the side. As for Xie Zhen, the killing intent in his eyes became even stronger. A lowly and dared to speak to him like that. He should be killed 10,000 times. Boom. Shi Zheng's killing intent burst out. He stepped forward and the pressure of the spiritual god pressed toward Lu Ming. Chapter 1097. 1097 Chapter 1097 Transfer to the Law Enforcement Army. It seems that I can't use this identity. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. He planned to take action directly and kill Shi Zheng, Shi Fang and Xie Zhen together. At this moment Haha, 8th brother, what's up? Why is it so lively? A loud laugh was heard, and then a rumble came from the sky, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping over. There were about a few hundred cavalrymen, each of them riding a fiery red war horse. These war horses were covered in fiery red scales, and there were 2 dragon horns on their heads. Flames were dancing all over their bodies, making them look very mighty. This was a dragon horse, and it was said that it had the bloodline of a true dragon. A powerful dragon horse was no weaker than a flood dragon. There were hundreds of people, all of them riding dragon horses. The leader was a young man with a slender figure. He was wearing fiery red armor and fiery boots. His hair was loose and his eyes were like lightning. His aura was powerful. 10th Prince. Many people cried out in alarm. Boom, boom, boom. The dragon horse stomped on the air and appeared above the military camp. Your subordinate greets the 10th Prince. Shi Zheng, Shi Fang, and the others quickly knelt down in the 10th Prince's heart, their eyes filled with respect. 10th brother, why have you come? Xie Zhen's expression was a little ugly. As he looked at the young man before him, there was a hint of jealousy and respect in the depths of his eyes. The 10th Prince, Xie Yang, was a peerless heaven's favorite. Among all the children of the current Saint Emperor, he was one of the top existences. He was a second-class heaven's favorite whose name shook the central continent. His cultivation was powerful, and he had even stepped into the spiritual god realm. His status in the ancient Saint dynasty was not something that Xie Zhen could compare to. In the imperial family, Xie Yang's existence was second only to Xian Yanjuan. 8th brother, you can come here to hunt but I can't. What are you guys doing? It seems like he wants to attack one of your subordinates. What's going on? You tell me. The 10th Prince, Xie Yang, pointed at one of the imperial dragon guards and ordered. His tone was arrogant and unquestionable. The imperial dragon guard didn't dare to show the slightest neglect, nor did he dare to hide anything. He recounted the entire matter. Haha, so that's how it is. 8th brother, you're becoming more and more useless. You can't even beat a 7th level spirit embryo vice flag. If you can't beat it, then so be it. We agreed to fight, but if you lose, you want to kill someone else. If this matter were to spread, wouldn't my sage emperor clan become a joke? Xie Yang indifferently said. Haha, 10th brother, you've misunderstood. I didn't mean to kill him. Just now, Guard Shi Zheng saw that I was injured and was worried. That's why he stood in front of me to protect me. It's all a misunderstanding. Xie Zhen's expression changed before he revealed an ugly smile. Oh, really? So it was just a misunderstanding. This deputy banner has good combat strength. He's only 1 level higher than 8th brother, but he can easily crush 8th brother. He's a talent. Xie Yang said with a smile. Xie Zhen's fists were clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. He was furious. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and smiled. Not bad, this deputy banner of the Bright Road has good combat power. Therefore, I plan to transfer him to the law enforcement army. The million-year national sacrifice is about to begin. When the time comes, the holy city will be in chaos. The law enforcement army is in need of manpower. Hearing this, Shi Fang and Shi Zheng's eyes lit up and they sneered. The others looked at Lu Ming with pity. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. What did these looks mean? Haha, he's your man, 8th brother. You can do whatever you want with him. I'm leaving. Xie Yang smiled and led the 400 cavalrymen towards Beast Cry Mountain. After Xie Yang left, Xie Zhen's expression darkened. He coldly glanced at Lu Ming and said, Vice Banner Ming, go back and wait. The order will come soon. You will go to the law enforcement army and be a commander. With your combat strength, it's enough. As soon as he said that, the expressions of the people around him became even stranger. They looked at Lu Ming with even more pity. Also, you will be transferred to the law enforcement army with him. Then, Xie Zhen pointed at Sun Lin. Plop. Sun Lin's expression changed drastically, and he immediately knelt down with a plop. He kowtowed and cried out in pain, No, 8th Prince, I'm begging you, please don't transfer me to the law enforcement army. I'm only living with him, I don't know him. Mph, you want to disobey this prince's orders? Xie Zhen's eyes turned cold. Sun Lin's face was pale as he stood there, stunned. Let's go. Xie Zhen rose into the air and returned to the mansion. The others quickly followed. AI, Minglu, I'm really going to be killed by you. Sun Lin let out a long sigh, his face full of dejection. What's going on? Why don't you want to join the law enforcement army? From the name, the law enforcement army should have a lot of power, Lu Ming asked curiously. Many sects had law enforcement halls, which had great power and could enforce the law on behalf of the sect. Everyone respected them. Why did Sun Lin seem to be very afraid of joining the law enforcement army? Moreover, when the others heard that Xiezhen wanted to transfer Lu Ming to the law enforcement army, they all looked at him with pity. He was somewhat baffled. Ari, you don't know this, but the law enforcement army does have a lot of power, but it's useless now. Sun Lin sighed and continued to explain. The law enforcement army is the law enforcement agency of the ancient Saint dynasty. They are responsible for the law enforcement of the entire Saint city and maintaining the law and order. No matter who it is, no matter which power they are from, if they commit a crime in the Saint city, the law enforcement army will be dispatched to enforce the law. Lu Ming nodded. Wasn't this a lot of power? 30,000 years ago, when the ancient Saint dynasty ruled the world, the law enforcement army was indeed fearsome and powerful. Whoever dared to commit a crime would be suppressed or even killed on the spot. At that time, everyone wanted to join the law enforcement army. As long as you joined the army, everyone would be afraid of you. But now, the ancient Saint dynasty is weak, and the various emperors are all powerful. The law enforcement army is in an awkward position. For example, if the disciples of the major forces commit a crime, will the law enforcement army take action or not? If we don't do anything, the law enforcement army will represent the face of the ancient Saint dynasty, and the royal family might blame us for it. However, if we do, the experts from the major powers will put pressure on the royal family, and under the pressure, the royal family will hand over the law enforcement army to appease the other party. In that case, who would be willing to go? Sun Lin explained. Lu Ming was suddenly enlightened. He finally understood. The main reason was that the ancient Saint dynasty was weak now, and they did not dare to offend those powerful forces. If that was the case, the authority of the law enforcement army would basically be useless. If they did not make a move, it would be equivalent to throwing the face of the ancient Saint dynasty. If they did, the people from the major powers would be powerful enough to put pressure on the law enforcement army. If the law enforcement army made a move, they would become the scapegoats. No matter what he did, it would be wrong. He would be jumping into the fire pit no matter what he did. It was no wonder that the others were in such a state when they heard that Lu Ming would be transferred to the law enforcement army. Sigh, once I'm transferred into the law enforcement army, it's over. Furthermore, the million-year national sacrifice is coming. When that time comes, the holy city will be in chaos, and all the major factions of the divine wilderness continent will gather. It will definitely be chaotic. It's a dead end. Sun Lin sighed and rose into the air with a dejected expression. Chapter 1098. 1098 Chapter 1098 A group of poor ghosts. 3 days later, the transfer order was officially issued. Lu Ming was transferred to the law enforcement army as the commander, leading a team of 100 people with Sun Lin following. Lu Ming took the transfer order and set off with Sun Lin. Lu Ming did not feel anything. To him, the law enforcement army was better and he had more freedom. He could walk around the holy city as he pleased. He would definitely be able to obtain more information. Sun Lin, on the other hand, was listless and looked like he had a bleak future. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the place where the law enforcement army was stationed, the law enforcement hall. There were many law enforcement halls in the holy city. A team of 100 people was led by a commander. They were stationed in one law enforcement hall and were responsible for law enforcement missions in a certain area of the holy city. Lu Ming was the leader of this law enforcement team. He was mainly in charge of the northeast area of the holy city. The moment Lu Ming entered, he saw a few figures sitting listlessly in the law enforcement hall. He did not see anyone else. When they saw Lu Ming and the rest, they only took a casual glance at Lu Ming and continued to sit listlessly. There are only a few of you. Where are the others? Lu Ming frowned. One of them glanced at Lu Ming and said, "Who are you? Don't you know that it's a serious crime to break into the law enforcement hall without permission? I am the new commander. Let me ask you, where are the others? Lu Ming took out a token and shouted coldly. A new commander. Their eyes suddenly lit up, shining with greed. The blazing fire seemed to have invigorated them all, and they stood up one after another. A new commander has arrived. Brothers, come out. We have money to spend again, someone shouted. His voice spread far and wide. As soon as his voice fell, the sound of breaking air rang out. Figures rushed out from various rooms and from all corners of the law enforcement hall. There were a total of 80 to 90 people. As soon as these people appeared, they stared at Lu Ming and Sun Lin with fiery eyes, as if they were burly men who had been thirsty for decades and had just seen a peerless and enchanting beauty. Ha ha, another unlucky fellow has been transferred here, and it's a commander. You've come at the right time. Take out all your raw gemstones and treasures and share them with your brothers. A brawny man who looked like an ape stepped out. His muscles bulged and he glared at Lu Ming with a fierce gaze. Hee, you're only a 7th level spirit embryo realm martial artist, yet you were transferred here to be a commander. I really don't know who you've offended, but no matter who you've offended, since you're here, hand over all your origin stones and treasures. A white-haired old man in his 60s sneered. Haha, after we get the raw stone, let's go and have a good meal and enjoy our sleevers. How about it? That's for sure. Damn it, I haven't enjoyed it in a long time. The rest of the people were also in an uproar. They were all talking and looking at Lu Ming as if he was a piece of fat meat. Sun Lin's face was pale and Lu Ming was dumbfounded. Was this the law enforcement army? This was the law enforcement hall? Lu Ming almost thought that he had come to a bandit's lair. These people actually wanted to rob him. After observing carefully, he realized that this was undoubtedly the law enforcement hall. You guys want to rob me? Lu Ming's face revealed an inexplicable smile. You can understand it that way. Hurry up, or my fist will start to itch. The gorilla-like man glared at Lu Ming unkindly. The smile on Lu Ming's face grew wider. He swept his gaze across the room and said, if that's the case, then fine. Now, I'll rob you. Hand over all your storage rings. What? What did you just say? As soon as Lu Ming said that, the entire place fell silent. Everyone looked at Lu Ming with their mouths agape. After a while, everyone burst into laughter. Haha, I didn't hear wrongly, right? This 7th level spirit embryo realm guy actually wants to rob us? Who does he think he is? Did he really think of himself as a commander? Aren't you just as unlucky as us? You've offended someone you shouldn't have. What a joke. Bang. The black gorilla man took a step forward and his aura burst out. He waved his hand and grabbed Lu Ming. This person's cultivation was at the great circle of the spirit embryo realm. Among this group of people, he was at the top. Let's see what you can do. The black gorilla man revealed a savage expression. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. He stretched out a hand and grabbed the black gorilla man's wrist at lightning speed. His vital essence burst forth and he grabbed the black gorilla man and threw him. Boom. The black gorilla man was like a sandbag, heavily smashing onto the ground, causing the entire law enforcement hall to shake violently. If it wasn't for the powerful array inscribed in the law enforcement hall, it would have exploded. The black gorilla man fell to the ground and screamed. His cultivation and essential core were extremely fragile in Lu Ming's hands. They had been completely scattered by Lu Ming. At this moment, his whole body seemed to be falling apart. He had no strength at all as he lay on the ground and wailed. There was a sudden silence and everyone looked at Lu Ming in shock. The black gorilla man had a cultivation of the great circle of the spirit embryo realm, but he was actually defeated without any resistance in one move. How was this possible? Brothers, let's attack together. This person's combat strength is profound, and he must have a lot of money on him. Let's attack. The white-haired old man shouted and the 80 to 90 law enforcement soldiers followed suit. They swarmed toward Lu Ming. Bang! Lu Ming took a step forward and dashed over like a stream of light, his palm striking out. Pa! Pa! In the law enforcement hall, the sound of rapid slapping, as well as wails and screams, were mixed together. In less than a minute, 80 to 90 law enforcement soldiers were lying all over the law enforcement hall, wailing on the ground. One side of their faces was puffed up, and they looked extremely miserable. Sun Lin was dumbfounded by this scene, his mouth wide open. Was Lu Ming's cultivation at the 7th level of spirit embryo realm? Wasn't his combat strength a little too strong? In this group of law enforcement soldiers, there were 5 to 6 people with great perfection in their spirit embryo realm. The others were at least experts of the 4th level spirit embryo realm. However, they were completely defeated by Lu Ming in less than a minute. They were as weak as babies. This was too terrifying. He felt that his brain was a little confused. You dare to fight with your father, you're looking for death. Lu Ming shouted coldly. Lu Ming now had the image of a burly man with a full beard. At this moment, his glare was rather intimidating. He clenched his fist in the air and his essential core burst forth. The storage rings on the fingers of these law enforcement soldiers were all sucked over by Lu Ming. If they wanted to rob him, they had to be prepared to be robbed by him. First, Lu Ming picked up the storage ring of the black gorilla man and scanned it with his spiritual senses. He was dumbfounded. This. Aren't you a little too poor? Lu Ming glared at the gorilla man, completely speechless. In the storage ring of the black gorilla man, there was almost nothing except for a few spiritual crystals. There were no raw stones. He didn't have any good spirit weapons. Not to mention precious pills and materials, there was nothing. In any case, this was a storage ring with a great circle of spirit embryo realm. How could it be so poor? Next, Lu Ming looked at the other people's storage rings. Many of them were even poorer than the gorilla man. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. They were too poor. The lowest cultivation among these people was the 4th level spirit embryo realm. Why did it feel like they were even poorer than some martial king realm martial artists? Chapter 1099. 1099 The Miserable Law Enforcement Army. Lu Ming scanned through dozens of storage rings and found that they were almost the same. The contents were simply too tragic to gamble. They did not look like the storage rings of martial artists at the 4th level of the spirit embryo realm and above. At the sight of Lu Ming's dumbfounded look, the gorilla man and the rest looked embarrassed. With a wave of his hand, all the storage rings flew back into the hands of the black gorilla man and the others. Get up, stop pretending to be dead. Lu Ming swept his gaze across the room and said coldly. Lu Ming had not hit them hard just now. He had only temporarily scattered their essential core. It was not a big deal. No matter what, Lu Ming was now the commander of these people. He could not just kill them the moment he came. Only then did the black gorilla man and the others get up from the ground. Commander's battle prowess is profound. This subordinate is truly in admiration. As soon as he got up, the black gorilla man revealed a simple and honest smile, which was completely different from the wild and violent expression he had earlier. That's right, that's right. The commander's cultivation is unparalleled. He was able to take care of us in a few moves. This is the first time this subordinate has seen something like this in all my years of life. The white-haired old man also flattered. The commander is invincible. The commander is mighty. The other law enforcement officers were also flattering him. Lu Ming's eyelids were twitching. He was rather speechless. Who were these people? Just now, she wanted to rob him, but now she changed her face so quickly. Why are you so poor? There isn't even a single raw gemstone in the storage ring? Lu Ming asked curiously. Our law enforcement army is so hard. Commander, it's like this. The crowd chimed in and explained to Lu Ming. After listening to the story, Lu Ming fell into deep thought. The law enforcement army's days were worse than what Sun Lin had said. The law enforcement army had to enforce the law in the sacred city and protect the dignity of the ancient Saint dynasty. But now that the ancient Saint dynasty was on the decline, even though it was still a dominant power, or even the strongest dominant power, it was still just a dominant power. It no longer had the strength to rule the world. Hence, when it did things, it had to be careful and maintain a good relationship with the other powers. Therefore, when the people of the big forces committed a crime, the law enforcement army did not dare to really arrest and punish them, but they had to protect the face of the imperial family. What could they do? Therefore, most of the time, the law enforcement army could only pay out of their own pocket to give gifts to the disciples of the major forces and those who had committed crimes, asking them to do a good deed and apologize in public. In this way, the law enforcement army would naturally protect the face of the royal family, and the people who had committed the crime would admit their mistakes. The matter would be resolved just like that. However, they paid for it out of their own pockets. As time passed, it would be strange if the law enforcement army was not poor. It was no wonder that they wanted to rob Lu Ming the moment they saw him as a newcomer. Lu Ming was really quite speechless. The law enforcement army was too cowardly. The person who had committed the crime was fine, but they had to give the other party benefits. This was simply unheard of. The law enforcement army is used to enforce the law in the world on behalf of the ancient Saint dynasty. Unfortunately, the ancient Saint dynasty no longer has the power to do so. In fact, the law enforcement army could have been disbanded a long time ago, but the royal family has kept it for the sake of their dignity. However, no one is willing to come here. Usually, only those who have offended some big shots will be sent here. The white-haired old man sighed. Lu Ming finally knew why Xie Zhen had transferred him to the law enforcement army, and as a commander at that. It was getting closer and closer to the million-year national sacrifice. People from all the major forces had gathered. It was a period of trouble. If things went wrong, Lu Ming would offend someone and he would not even know how he died. Moreover, as a commander, the responsibility he had to bear was naturally greater. Xie Zhen, if you want to play, then have fun. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. He waved his hand and a storage ring flew towards the black gorilla man. Here are 10,000 Auriroks, use them to buy some fine wine and delicacies. Since we're new here, I'll treat everyone to a good meal. As for the excess, you can each buy a spirit weapon. These people were so poor that they had even sold their own spirit weapons. 10,000 raw gemstones. The black gorilla man received it. He was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed, saying, "Your subordinate thanks the commander." The others were overjoyed as well. They thanked Lu Ming and then went to buy fine wine, delicacies, and spirit weapons in joy. The fine wine and delicacies that martial artists ate were different from ordinary people. They were all from powerful fierce beasts and demonic beasts. The wine was also spirit wine. They were all very expensive. Half a day later, the burly black gorilla man and the rest brought back a large amount of fine wine and delicacies. The 80 to 90 people were divided into several tables and ate to their heart's content. It had been a long time since they had such a good meal and they were quite grateful to Lu Ming. Everyone ate and drank as they chatted. Through the chat, Lu Ming learned that these people had offended important figures and were sent here. They had families and friends in the holy city, but they couldn't escape. They could only suffer in the law enforcement army. Everyone ate and drank for a few hours. Not good. Someone destroyed a shop on North Street and killed the shopkeeper. He's still there. Suddenly, a law enforcement soldier rushed in to report the news. What? Who did this? This is troublesome. Something has happened again. The expressions of the black gorilla man and the others changed. What they were most afraid of was something happening, because if something happened, they could deal with some unknown people and directly take them down. However, if it was some big figure, they would be in trouble. It's the young master of the Huang family, Huang Ku. The messenger said. What? The Huang family is a family with many spiritual gods. What should we do? The expressions of the black gorilla man and the others changed. They could not afford to offend any force that had a spiritual god. Otherwise, the other party's spiritual god powerhouse could directly find their superiors and put pressure on them. Let's go and take a look. Lu Ming picked up a glass of wine and finished it. He strode out. We'll go together. The gorilla man picked more than 10 people and followed Lu Ming out of the law enforcement hall. Their law enforcement hall was in the northeast of the holy city. It was very close to North Street and would be there in a short while. On the way, Lu Ming also knew what was going on. The Huang family's young master, Huang Ku, had his eyes on a treasure in a shop, but there were no raw gemstones. He said that he would owe the shop and take the treasure first. Those who knew Huang Ku well knew that he had never returned anything he owed. The shopkeeper naturally didn't agree, so Huang Ku killed the shopkeeper, destroyed the shop, and even wanted to kill the shopkeeper's entire family. The moment he arrived, he heard an arrogant voice. "Fuck, I'm giving you face, but you don't want it. I said I'll owe you first, so I'll owe you first. It's not like I won't pay you back, so why are you still not agreeing? You're looking for death, who can you blame?" An arrogant voice sounded. "Get lost. If you don't get lost, I'll kill you too." A deep voice rang out. It must have been Huang Ku's servant. Move aside, the law enforcement army is handling this matter, move aside." The black gorilla man roared and the crowd made way for Lu Ming to walk over. A white-haired old man was lying on the ground, no longer breathing. Beside the old man's corpse stood a young man in luxurious clothes. His eyes were cold and his face was cold and arrogant. Chapter 1100. 1100 Chapter 1100 Punitive Expedition. This young man was Huang Ku. Behind Huang Ku, there was a burly man. At this moment, Huang Ku also saw Lu Ming and the rest. However, he did not show any fear. Instead, he sneered. "What's going on?" Lu Ming walked over and asked with a frown. "So it's the law enforcement army. This person offended me and was beheaded by me. You can collect his body." Huang Ku put her hands behind her back and glanced at Lu Ming casually. "You killed him?" This person was running a shop in the Holy City and was under the protection of the law enforcement army. "Why did you kill him? Come with us to the law enforcement hall and give us a good explanation," Lu Ming said coldly. "What did you just say? You want to take me to the law enforcement hall?" Huang Ku almost burst out laughing as if she had heard a very funny joke. She looked at Lu Ming in disbelief. On the side, the others were in a similar situation. The law enforcement hall dared to arrest Huang Ku? The Huang family was a big force in the sacred city. Now the law enforcement army was useless. Did they really dare to take Huang Ku down? Nonsense. "Taixing, take him down," Lu Ming shouted. Taixing was the name of the black gorilla man. The black gorilla man revealed a difficult expression. "Commander, it's not good to offend this Huang Ku." Taixing whispered in Lu Ming's ear. If you guys don't do it, I'll do it myself." Lu Ming's eyes turned cold and he stepped forward. "You dare?" Huang Ku shouted. "Why wouldn't I?" Lu Ming sneered. "A mere law enforcement soldier. He's looking for death. Kill him." With a wave of Huang Ku's hand, the burly man behind him stepped forward. A violent aura burst forth, the aura of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. "Go to hell!" The burly man bellowed with cold killing intent. He unsheathed his saber and slashed at Lu Ming's neck. "You want to kill me? Die." Lu Ming took a step forward and slapped. The space rumbled and the terrifying power broke through all of the burly man's defenses. A palm hit the burly man's chest, directly blasting a big hole in it. He let out a miserable scream and died with an incredulous expression. Even until his death, he still could not believe that the law enforcement army's trash had actually become so overbearing. You dare to." Huang Ku was so frightened that her face turned pale. She shivered and looked at Lu Ming in disbelief. "If you want to kill me, you have to be killed by me. You asked him to kill me, so I'll cripple you first." Lu Ming's eyes were filled with killing intent. "No, don't." Huang Ku was extremely frightened. Whoosh. Lu Ming flicked his fingers and a spear ray shot out, crippling Huang Ku's cultivation. "Ah, you've destroyed my cultivation. I want you to die a horrible death." Huang Ku let out a shrill scream. On the side, the others were extremely shocked. This law enforcement army was completely different from the past. They were actually so ruthless and decisive. However, there were also many people secretly clapping their hands. Huang Ku had finally gotten his retribution for all the evil he had done by relying on his family's power. However, this law enforcement army was going to be in trouble soon, and the Huang family would not let this go. This. Behind Lu Ming, Taixing and the rest widened their eyes. They were at a loss. Although doing this made them feel very good and comfortable, now they were comfortable, but what would the consequences be? After crippling Huang Ku, the Huang family would probably go crazy. Lu Ming pulled Huang Ku's and the burly man's storage rings over and handed them to the two women. The old man and the young man were obviously the shopkeeper's family members. The two of them cried bitterly and looked helpless. Take these 2 storage rings and leave the holy city. Go live elsewhere, Lu Ming said as he handed the storage ring to the two of them. Thank you, my lord. The two of them thanked him repeatedly and quickly left the city. Tai Xing, bring this piece of trash back to the law enforcement hall, Lu Ming instructed, then turned around and headed to the law enforcement hall. Tai Xing and the others looked at each other. In the end, they gritted their teeth, picked up Huang Ku, and rushed back to the law enforcement hall. On the way, Huang Ku cried and cried, attracting the attention of many people. There's going to be a good show. The Huang clan will definitely fly into a rage and kill their way to the law enforcement hall. They probably won't attack the law enforcement army directly, but they'll put pressure on the higher-ups of the law enforcement army before attacking the law enforcement hall. Let's go and take a look. Let's go and take a look. Along the way, a large group of people followed behind Lu Ming and the rest as they headed to the law enforcement hall. Not long after, Lu Ming and the rest returned to the law enforcement hall. When the remaining law enforcement soldiers in the law enforcement hall saw this scene and heard what had happened, all of them were so scared that their faces turned pale. They were finished this time. How were they going to deal with the other party's experts when they came to kill them? Forget it, I can't hide, I'll go all out. But I'm still fucking happy. That's true, haha. The other members of the law enforcement hall were discussing in hushed voices. Lu Ming's expression was calm. He crossed his arms and closed his eyes to rest, waiting quietly. Meanwhile, the sky around the law enforcement hall was filled with people. Some were waiting quietly, while others were gloating. Time slowly passed. 2 hours later. The Huang family is here. Someone shouted. Buzz. At this moment, Lu Ming opened his eyes and looked at the sky. A total of 3 people stepped through the air. The 2 old men's clothes were very similar to Huang Ku's, so they should be experts of the Huang family. There was also a middle-aged man who was actually wearing the uniform of the law enforcement hall. It's the Lord Commander. Tai Xing's expression changed as he whispered into Lu Ming's ear. His so-called Lord Commander was the commander of the law enforcement army, commanding all the existing law enforcement troops in the Holy City. The law enforcement army's commander's face was as black as a pot. He looked at Lu Ming and chided, Minglu, why don't you release young Master Huang Ku? The law enforcement army's commander was in a bad mood. He was extremely upset, especially when he looked at Lu Ming. How could Lu Ming not know the current situation of the law enforcement army? Not only did he not apologize to the other party, but he also killed the Huang family's guards and crippled Huang Ku's cultivation. It would be strange if the Huang family didn't fly into a rage. The other party's spirit god powerhouse had come to him directly to put pressure on him. Release him? He, Commander, this man killed a shopkeeper on the street. The shopkeeper had to be protected by the ancient Saint dynasty if he was doing business in the Saint City. Otherwise, who would dare to do business in the Saint City in the future? I'm doing this impartially, why should I let him go? Lu Ming sneered in response. The other people from the law enforcement hall behind him were secretly worried for Lu Ming. The commander of the law enforcement army was a spiritual god powerhouse. Lu Ming actually dared to speak to a spiritual god powerhouse in this manner. As expected, Lu Ming's words made the commander of the law enforcement hall's face turn even gloomier. However, he could not find any words to refute. It was because Lu Ming was doing the right thing. Lu Ming was carrying out the duties of the law enforcement hall. As the commander of the law enforcement army, how could he refute that? Commander Chen, it seems like your subordinate doesn't listen to you at all. In that case, let me do it myself. I'll cripple this person's cultivation and bring him back to the Huang family to deal with him, an old man from the Huang family said indifferently. A killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 1101. 1101 Chapter 1101 Apologize. First level of spiritual God realm. Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. This elder from the Huang family had a cultivation of the first level of the spiritual God realm. Beside him was another elder from the Huang family, whose cultivation was even worse, only at the perfected spirit embryo realm. However, this person's aura was powerful and far beyond that of an ordinary great circle spirit embryo. Lu Ming speculated that this person must have awakened a divine level bloodline but had not broken through to the spiritual God realm. He was at the level of an old monster and his combat strength was much stronger than an ordinary great circle spirit embryo. Bang! Lu Ming stepped on Huang Ku's face directly, making Huang Ku scream like a pig being slaughtered. How dare you! You even threatened to cripple me, the commander of the law enforcement army, in the law enforcement hall. You're simply disgraceful and should be killed. Lu Ming shouted and glared at him. With his full beard, he looked very righteous. He exerted force on his feet, causing Huang Ku's face to rub against the ground. Ah, forefather, save me. Huang Ku screamed in pain. Audacious evil beast, you're looking for death. The perfected spirit embryo elder from the Huang family shouted and took a step forward. His aura was violent and formed a huge palm that pressed down on Lu Ming. Not good, it's an old monster with a perfect spirit embryo. The expressions of Tai Xing and the others changed drastically. Tai Xing was also at the great circle of the spirit embryo realm, but compared to this great circle of the spirit embryo realm who had awakened a divine level bloodline, there was a huge difference in battle prowess. However, Lu Ming's expression remained calm. He clenched his palm into a claw and clawed upward. With a poof, the elder's condensed palm instantly crumbled. Lu Ming's claw formed from essential core did not stop and clawed at the elder at an unbelievable speed. He caught the elder in his hand in an instant. Break! The elder's expression changed drastically. His divine level bloodline appeared and he used the fusion of his bloodlines to release a violent attack. He wanted to break through Lu Ming's true essence claw. Unfortunately, it did not move at all. Get down here. Let's go. Lu Ming shouted. He pulled the elder down from the air and smashed him on the ground. Boom. The ground shook and the elder screamed in pain. His protective true vitality was shattered by Lu Ming's attack. His bones were cracking and many of them were broken. He lay there screaming like a dead dog. The surrounding onlookers, including the other people of the law enforcement hall, were all dumbfounded and looked at this scene in disbelief. Especially those onlookers, they were swallowing their saliva like crazy. This law enforcement hall's commander was too awesome. First of all, his battle prowess had exceeded everyone's expectations. An old monster with a perfect spirit embryo realm was dragged down from the air with a single move and smashed into the ground, half dead. This kind of battle prowess could be said to be astonishing. Secondly, this commander was too bold. Not only did he cripple Huang Ku, but he also beat up an elder of the Huang family. He would definitely face the anger of a spirit god expert next. Evil creature, you're looking for death. Sure enough, the spirit god expert from the Huang family was furious. He roared and a terrifying aura burst out. A pressure as deep as the ocean filled the entire area. Many people's expressions changed drastically and they retreated. The pressure formed by a spirit god expert was too strong and absolutely terrifying. Die! The spiritual god of the Huang family shouted and pointed out a finger. Wherever the finger passed, a yellow light burst out, twisting the space like a wave and finally tearing it apart. Whoosh! A terrifying finger force was pointed at Lu Ming's glabella. This overpowered commander is finish. Such a thought flashed through everyone's mind. Boom! Just as this sentence flashed across everyone's minds, Lu Ming threw a punch at the sky. A fist ray soared into the sky and collided with the finger force. With a huge boom, the finger force and the fist ray disappeared at the same time. What? He blocked the spiritual god's attack? Cries of disbelief came from all around. Lu Ming's combat strength had once again exceeded everyone's expectations. He had actually blocked the spiritual god's attack. The eyes of the law enforcement hall's commander flickered. He was extremely surprised. As far as he knew, Ming Lu was sent to the law enforcement army by the 8th Prince because he had offended the 8th Prince. He had received news that this man's combat strength was only slightly stronger than the 8th Prince's. He had recklessly injured the 8th Prince when they were sparring, so no matter how strong he was, there was a limit to his combat strength. He did not expect that he could actually block the attack of the spirit god. It seems like this person has been hiding his strength. The commander-in-chief of the law enforcement army thought to himself. A murderous glint flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. His gaze was like two dazzling spears of light that pierced towards the Huang family elder. He said coldly, "It seems like you want to be like him." The him that Lu Ming was referring to was the old man with a perfected spirit embryo. At this moment, the spiritual god of the Huang family could not help but feel nervous. At this moment, he could actually feel a terrifying pressure from Lu Ming. It was as if he was facing a terrifying beast that could tear him into pieces if it went crazy. This feeling made him panic. "What do you want?" The spiritual god of the Huang family said with an ugly expression. "Apologize in public and admit your mistakes." Lu Ming said. "Don't even think about it. Don't go too far. If you let him go now, I won't pursue the matter." The spiritual god of the Huang family's face turned ugly, but he had already given in by saying so. Lu Ming sneered. "This man killed the shopkeeper for no reason. I'm the commander of the law enforcement army and I enforce the law on behalf of the sacred emperor. How dare you come to the law enforcement hall? Do you have no respect for the ancient Saint dynasty, the royal family, and the Xie family? Do you want to overturn the heavens? And you, as the commander of the law enforcement hall, not only did you not enforce the law impartially, but you also helped the other party to bully the law enforcement hall. It seems that you don't put the imperial family in your eyes at all." Lu Ming's every word struck the heart. The Huang family's spirit god and the commander of the law enforcement hall had a drastic change in their expressions. Lu Ming was pulling the wool over their eyes and giving them a big hat. However, this was too heavy a burden for them to bear. There were so many people here today. If Lu Ming's words were to reach the ears of the imperial family or even the sage emperor, they would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. Although the law enforcement hall existed in name only and no one really took it to heart, in essence, the law enforcement hall was still the law enforcement hall. Before the law enforcement army was disbanded, its significance was the same as it was 30,000 years ago, and it had the power to enforce the law in the world. In fact, the other people of the law enforcement hall could also put such a label on others, because once this matter was blown up, the imperial family would definitely intervene. However, the prerequisite was that one had to be strong. Take Lu Ming for example. If he was not powerful enough, he would be killed by the Huang family's expert with one slap. He would not even have the chance to pin the blame on him. However, it was different now. Since Lu Ming had already spoken and pinned the blame on them, if they continued to attack, they would have proven Lu Ming's words of not taking the royal family and the Xie family seriously. In the future, the royal family and the Xie family would definitely take action. Otherwise, where would he put his face? Damn it. The spirit god of the Huang family and the commander-in-chief of the law enforcement army gritted their teeth, but they were helpless. "All right. This matter is my Huang family's fault. I apologize. In the future, I will definitely warn the disciples of the Huang family to follow the rules of the law enforcement army." The Huang family's spiritual god had no choice but to apologize. Then, he looked at Huang Ku and asked him to apologize. Huang Ku was extremely unwilling, but in the end, she could only apologize. Chapter 1102. 1102 World-Shaking News. Get lost. Lu Ming picked up Huang Ku and threw her to the Huang family's spiritual god as if he was throwing garbage. The Huang family's spirit god's expression was extremely cold. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the old man with a perfect spirit embryo, leaving without looking back. Today, the Huang family had completely lost face. The commander of the law enforcement army snorted and left. The surrounding people looked at each other in disbelief. They had originally thought that this commander would be dead for sure since the Huang family had launched a large-scale attack. However, They didn't expect that even though the experts of the Huang family had come, they had returned with dejected faces. As for this commander, he hadn't even suffered a single injury. This was beyond everyone's expectations. This commander of the law enforcement army is really awesome. He's really awesome. He's the most awesome law enforcement army commander I've ever seen. The crowd was in a heated discussion. The people from the law enforcement army were also at a loss for words. They didn't expect the final result to be like this. But it felt great. The eyes of the 80 or 90 law enforcement soldiers lit up. They felt extremely comfortable. As for Lu Ming, he was full of admiration. The mighty commander, Tai Xing roared. "All right, cut the crap and get to work." Lu Ming waved his hands and went back to his room. The crowd dispersed, but the news of an impressive commander in the law enforcement army spread like a whirlwind. It gave everyone another topic to talk about besides cultivating. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in the law enforcement army for half a month. In the past half a month, other than cultivating, Lu Ming had been strolling around the holy city. Of course, he wasn't really wandering around. He was just loitering outside the palace to see if he could find an opportunity to slip in. In the end, he had no choice but to give up. There were too many terrifying existences in the imperial palace. He had once sensed carefully and discovered that there were many terrifying existences in the imperial palace that could easily kill him. There were even some auras that were extremely terrifying, just like the aura of the Supreme Being. They were definitely at the Supreme Being level. Lu Ming could sense more than 10 auras like this. This was what Lu Ming sensed. There must be something that he did not sense. Even though the ancient Saint dynasty was weak, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The ancient Saint dynasty was still the most powerful overlord force in the central continent. This was normal. If they weren't strong, they would have been destroyed by the other overlord forces. Many overlord forces were eyeing them covetously. In the past half a month, more and more people had come to the sacred city. The million-year national sacrifice of the ancient Saint dynasty was getting closer and closer. However, due to the incident with the Huang family, some small forces would not be too presumptuous. In the area under Lu Ming's jurisdiction, there were no major events. On this day, a shocking piece of news spread in the sacred city. The sage emperor intended to choose a husband for one of the princesses in this 1 million-year national sacrifice, and he wanted to choose one of the heroes of the younger generation. The news was like an earthquake, shaking the sacred city and shocking countless people. The current sage emperor had a total of 16 children. There were 13 princes and only 3 princesses. However, the 13 princes were completely suppressed by the 3 princesses. This was because 2 of the 3 princesses were famous throughout the world. They were simply too outstanding. Xian Yanjuan, one of the 5 young tycoons of Central Continent, was also one of the 5 great beauties of Central Continent. There was also a princess named Xian Yanlin. She was also one of the 5 beauties of the Central Continent. Although her martial arts talent was slightly inferior to Xian Yanjuan's, she was also a second-grade heaven's favorite. She was as famous as Goddess Tan Xiong. These 2 princesses were simply too outstanding, making countless people envious. It was said that there was also a princess who was the youngest of all the princes and princesses. She was also peerless in her beauty and temperament. She was not inferior to the other 2 princesses at all. Even her martial arts talent was shocking, but not many people had seen her before. That was because the princess was an anomaly in the royal Xie family. The word variant was a taboo word in the royal Xie family. The royal Xie family had declined because of a variant. Which princess was he looking for? Everyone was extremely curious. However, no matter which princess it was, many young geniuses from the major forces were tempted. After that, all the major forces sent people to investigate and verify the authenticity of the news. Lu Ming was shocked when he heard this piece of news. Who was the one choosing a husband for the princess? Lu Ming was filled with worry. He was afraid that it was Xian Yanqing. 3 days later, even more shocking news spread. The current sage emperor had personally spoken, ordering people to spread the news. It was true that he was choosing a husband for a princess. This princess was Xian Yanlin. On top of that, there would be a competition between the young geniuses on the day of the million-year national sacrifice. The winner would become Xian Yanlin's husband and enter the ancient Saint Empress Palace to cultivate. The second and third place winners would be able to propose a condition to the Sage Emperor, which the Sage Emperor would try his best to fulfill. At the same time, they would be able to enter the ancient hall for comprehension. As for those ranked 4th to 10th, they would be able to enter the ancient Saint Emperor's hall to cultivate. Once the news was out, the sacred city was shaken and countless people were shocked. At the same time, the news spread like a whirlwind to the central continent and even the 4 other territories. Countless young heaven's favorites were shocked and revealed a fiery glow. There were some geniuses who were not interested in first place and being able to marry a princess. They were interested in one of the conditions the Saint Emperor had set for them, which was to enter the Saint Emperor's ancient palace to cultivate. The Sage Emperor was an emperor, so there was no need to mention the value of his condition. The Saint Emperor's ancient palace was a holy land for cultivation. It was said that the ancient Saint dynasty's Saint Emperor's comprehensions were contained within. If one could comprehend them and gain something, it would be extremely useful for breaking through to the emperor level. The Xie clan of the ancient Saint dynasty had a legacy that had lasted for millions of years. They had produced many emperors throughout the generations, and this was why they had remained so powerful. Some people said that this had something to do with the ancient Saint Emperor Palace. This made the heavens' favorites who were interested in the emperor's path extremely excited. After confirming the news, they all rushed to the sacred city. Lu Ming heaved a huge sigh of relief when he heard that princess was not Xian Yanqing. But at the same time, Lu Ming was extremely tempted. He wasn't interested in Xian Yanlin, nor was he interested in entering the Saint Emperor's ancient hall. He was interested in one of the Saint Emperor's conditions. If he could get 2nd or 3rd place, he would be able to make a request to the Sage Emperor to let Xian Yanqing go. At the thought of this, Lu Ming had already decided to participate in the competition. This news caused chaos in the ancient Saint dynasty and became the top topic of discussion. This news was discussed every day. Many people were also secretly guessing why the Sage Emperor would do this. However, it wasn't hard for those with foresight to guess that the royal family and the Xie family wanted to use this method to strengthen the royal family's strength. The Heaven's Pride expert who could get 1st place and marry Princess Xian Yanlin must be from a powerful force. This way, the imperial family's strength would be increased through marriage. At the same time, by opening up the Saint Emperor Ancient Palace, they could also befriend those geniuses and the overlords. This was something that they had no choice but to do. From this, one could see how weak the Xie clan of the ancient Saint dynasty was. Chapter 1103. 1103 The Chaotic Heavens Divine Warrior. In the hustle and bustle, time passed day by day. The sacred city was even more lively, and there were more and more people. However, Lu Ming's days did not change. Other than cultivating, he would bring his people to stroll around the holy city. Hey! This mansion is so strange. It's covered in dust, but it's sealed by a large array of inscriptions. In the northeast of the holy city, Lu Ming led his group for a stroll and came to a huge mansion. This mansion was very old and majestic. It occupied a large area, but it was obviously uninhabited and sealed by a large formation. This was rare in the holy city. Lord, lower your voice. This mansion is a taboo. On the side, Sun Lin's face was solemn as he whispered, as if it was a taboo. Forbidden? I'm curious, tell me about it. Lu Ming asked curiously. This. Sun Lin hesitated and stammered. Speak. Lu Ming's face darkened. All right, Commander, I'll tell you through voice transmission. This is because this mansion is the mansion of the Chaotic Heavens Divine Warrior, Ciel Wan. Sun Lin sent a voice transmission to Lu Ming. Ciel Wan, the Divine Warrior of the Chaotic Heavens. The Chaotic Heavens Divine Warrior who caused the chaos in the ancient Saint dynasty 30,000 years ago. Lu Ming was shocked. That's right, it's the Chaotic Heavens Divine Warrior's mansion, Sun Lin said. Oh, Sun Lin, You seem to know a lot about the chaotic heaven's divine emperor. Then do you know why he betrayed the imperial family and the Xie clan? Lu Ming asked. This. Lord Commander, I've also read about it in an ancient book by chance. It said that Ciel Wan, the chaotic heaven's divine warrior, is an anomaly in the Xie family. The royal Xie family has a noble bloodline, and the bloodline that they awaken is pure and holy. However, there is a very small chance that someone will awaken a bloodline that is completely different from others. It's the complete opposite, an extremely dark bloodline. Such a person is called an anomaly by the royal Xie family, and will be looked down upon and ridiculed. When the chaotic sky sovereign was young, he grew up in all kinds of mockery and bullying, so he was filled with hatred towards the royal Xie family. However, the chaotic sky sovereign's talent was terrifyingly strong. The more bloodlines he awakened, the more terrifying his talent became. He was simply unparalleled in the world, so he was later valued by the royal Xie family and entrusted with an important task. After that, the chaotic heaven's divine warrior even broke through to the divine realm. His combat strength was extremely terrifying, and he was able to suppress the other divine warriors. At that time, the chaotic heaven's divine warrior finally erupted. He led his subordinates and started a rebellion. They fought the royal family and the Xie family until the heavens and earth fell. Although the chaotic heaven's divine warrior was suppressed in the end, the ancient Saint dynasty suffered great losses in that battle. Countless spirit gods and supreme beings died, and even many divine warriors died. From then on, their strength was greatly weakened, and the other forces took the opportunity to split up. To form the current situation, Sun Lin told Lu Ming about the records he had read. Lu Ming was deep in thought. The experience of the chaotic heaven's divine warrior was so similar to that of Xian Yanqing. The bloodline that he awakened was called an anomaly by the royal Xie family. It was just a bloodline, yet he treated it like this. It was simply ridiculous. Ciel Wan, the sovereign of the chaotic heavens, had unparalleled talent. If no one had laughed at him or humiliated him when he was young, why would he have rebelled after he had become powerful? If not for the betrayal, the Xie family of the ancient Saint dynasty would not have ended up where they were today. I've heard that the current 16th princess has also awakened a mutated bloodline. Sigh, what a pity. The other members of the royal family have always looked down on mutated bloodlines. After the incident with the chaotic sky emperor, the fate of those with mutated bloodlines has become even worse. Before the appearance of the chaotic heaven's divine warrior, if any of the royal family's variant bloodlines revealed their supreme talent, the royal family would still nurture them, just like the chaotic heaven's divine warrior. However, after the chaotic heaven's divine warrior appeared, any of the variant bloodlines would be directly suppressed. The stronger the talent, the more they would have to suppress it. It's simply a taboo, because they're afraid that another figure like the chaotic heaven's divine warrior would appear. Sun Lin continued. Catcher. Lu Ming could not help but clench his fists. No matter what, he had to save Xian Yanqing. No matter how difficult it was, he had to go through it. Thereafter, Lu Ming left the place and did not ask further. Time passed, and soon, there was still half a month to go before the million-year national sacrifice. After this period of cultivation, Lu Ming's cultivation had also progressed and he had reached the middle stage of the second level of the spiritual god realm. It's too slow. It's too slow to rely on absorbing spiritual energy to improve cultivation. Lu Ming sighed. However, he had no choice. He did not have many raw gemstones on him. The amount of raw gemstones he needed to increase his cultivation in the spiritual god realm was simply terrifying. However, the will of heaven and earth and the will of water had broken through and reached the fourth level lower tier. Now, only the will of earth had not broken through to the fourth level lower tier. On this day, Lu Ming had just ended his cultivation and was about to go out for a walk when someone came to inform him that something had happened. Someone had killed someone on the street and the battle was still ongoing. Who is it? Lu Ming asked. I heard that he's a disciple of the heavenly martial sword faction. Tai Xing replied with an ugly expression. The heavenly martial sword faction was an overlord force, and an extremely powerful one at that. What should he do now? They knew that as the various overlords gathered in the sacred city, something would happen. What do we do? Of course, we'll handle it fairly, Lu Ming said. Fair and just. Commander, the other party is the Heavenly Martial Sword School. Tai Xing called out worriedly. What's wrong with the Heavenly Martial Sword sect? Don't forget, this is the Holy City, not the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. You guys, follow me, Lu Ming shouted coldly and strode out. The others had no choice but to follow. They stepped on the air and flew, and soon arrived at the scene of the incident, outside a restaurant. At this moment, the restaurant was already surrounded by people. Lu Ming appeared in the sky and looked down. On the street, there were two people lying on the ground, blood flowing all over the ground. Their throats had been slit by a sword, and they had long since stopped breathing. On the other side of the two corpses, the battle was still going on. 3 white-robed disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction were attacking 3 people. An old man and 2 young men and women. However, these 3 people were no match for the 3 disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. The 3 Sky Martial Sword faction disciples were all 5th-level Spirit Embryo Realm experts. They were very young and belonged to the younger generation. To have such a cultivation at this age, he was obviously one of the top geniuses of the Heavenly Martial Sword sect. As for the old man and the 2 young ones, the old man's cultivation was at the 7th level of the Spirit Embryo Realm, but the young man and woman's cultivation was only at the 1st or 2nd level of the Spirit Embryo Realm. The difference was too great. Although the old man's cultivation was profound, the 3 disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction were all top-notch Heaven's Pride experts. It was common for them to fight above their level. They completely suppressed the old man and didn't have the power to fight back. Hihi, you're really looking for death. How dare you talk about the Heavenly Martial Sword sect behind our backs? One of the disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction sneered. Your Heavenly Martial Sword sect is too overbearing. You don't even allow others to chat. Wu Chengkong and the others were killed by Lu Shaoqing in the secret realm of the Saint Mansion of the Qianxia Academy. It's a fact that the whole world knows. Are you going to kill everyone in the world? The young woman said stubbornly. Chapter 1104. 1104 directly suppressed. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. From the simple conversation between the two of them, it was not difficult to guess what had happened. It must be the young woman and the others talking about what had happened in the Qianxia Academy and the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. In the secret realm of the Saint Mansion, the 2 strongest Heaven's favorites of the previous generation of the Heavenly Martial Sword sect were killed by Lu Ming. The 2 strongest Heaven's favorites of this generation were also killed by Lu Ming. They were lucky to survive because of the life talisman. This matter had already spread far and wide, and Lu Shaoqing's name had shaken the entire central continent. The young woman must have been talking about this matter, and if the disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword sect heard it, they would naturally take action. Shut up. How dare you bring this up again? Who knows what kind of despicable methods Lu Shaoqing used to harm the senior brothers of the Heavenly Martial Sword sect? How dare you all spout nonsense here? You're courting death. Kill. A few disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction shouted, and their attacks became even more violent. Stop. The law enforcement army is here. Lu Ming stepped on the air and shouted. The 3 disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction turned to look at Lu Ming, their eyes full of contempt. The Heavenly Martial Sword sect is handling matters. Unrelated people, get lost. A disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction shouted coldly. He was extremely domineering. They didn't even care about the law enforcement army. It's that awesome commander of the law enforcement army. Does he dare to touch the disciples of the Heavenly Sword faction? That's impossible. No matter how powerful he is, he might be able to deal with a small force like the Huang family. However, this is the Heavenly Martial Sword faction, a top overlord force. Unless he has a death wish, he would never dare to touch a disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. That's right. Didn't you see that the disciples of the Heavenly Sword faction didn't even care about him? At that moment, many people in the crowd recognized Lu Ming. However, No one thought that he would dare to touch the disciples of the Heaven Martial Sword faction. A small law enforcement army dared to touch a disciple of the Heavenly Sword faction? Wasn't that looking for death? Kill. The 3 Heaven Martial Sword faction disciples ignored Lu Ming and attacked more and more fiercely. Their sword chi was like a rainbow, and the 7th level Spirit Embryo Realm Elder was at a complete disadvantage. He couldn't resist at all, and his chest was slashed by a sword light. A deep sword mark appeared, almost splitting him in half, and blood flowed out. "Young lady, young master, leave quickly." The old man roared and exploded with all his might, trying to get the young man and woman to leave. "Leave. Today, none of you will be able to leave. If you dare to spread rumors about my Heavenly Sword sect, you will all be killed." A disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction shouted coldly. His figure flashed, and like a sword light, he bypassed the old man and attacked the young woman. "No." The old man roared, but he couldn't even save himself, so how could he help? The young woman's face was as white as snow. She was only at the 1st level of the Spirit Embryo Realm, while the other party was at the 5th level of the Spirit Embryo Realm. In addition, he was a Heaven's favorite with powerful combat strength. She couldn't block him at all. "Die." The disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction had a ferocious look in his eyes. His sword light was like lightning as it slashed towards the young woman. However, the sword light stopped halfway. Because the wrist of the person holding the sword was caught, the sword of the Heavenly Martial Sword School disciple could no longer cut down. The person who grabbed his wrist was naturally Lu Ming. At the critical moment, Lu Ming appeared in front of the young woman and blocked the sword of the disciple of the Sky Martial Sword School. When he saw that it was Lu Ming, the disciple's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He shouted, "How dare you, a mere law enforcement soldier, interfere with my attack? I'll kill you as well." With a burst of vital essence, the sword chi from the disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction whistled. He pointed his fingers at Lu Ming's throat like a sword. Bang! Lu Ming kicked the disciple's stomach. The disciple screamed and his body flew dozens of meters away. He fell heavily on the ground. You dare to fight back?" The disciple of the Sky Martial Sword faction shouted in disbelief. Lu Ming actually dared to hit him? He was a disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. "Idiot," Lu Ming said faintly. "This person wanted to kill him just now. Wasn't it normal for him to retaliate? Could it be that this disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction was so superior that no one would dare to fight back when he killed them? Was his head kicked by a donkey?" At this moment, the other 2 disciples of the Heaven Martial Sword faction stopped their attacks and looked at Lu Ming in a daze. A mere law enforcement army, an ant-like thing, actually dared to beat up a disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. They had yet to recover from their shock. The surrounding onlookers were also dumbfounded. After a long time, someone finally reacted. "Whoa, this awesome commander is really awesome. He even dared to beat up the disciples of the Heavenly Sword faction. That's right. This is beyond my expectations. He's too bold. He's bold, but he's brainless. How should he deal with the aftermath?" Lu Ming's action caused a wave of discussion as it really shocked everyone. Previously, no one had thought that Lu Ming would dare to make a move. However, the truth was beyond their expectations. "Brat, you're looking for death." At this moment, the other 2 disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction finally reacted. One of them shouted and became one with his sword, turning into a sharp sword light and charging toward Lu Ming, trying to kill him with one strike. Bang! However, he was met with Lu Ming's kick. This kick was the same as the previous one. It landed on his stomach. Fast, accurate and ruthless, the disciple let out a blood-curdling scream and was sent flying far away. He fell beside the previous disciple and also fell flat on his face. The 2 of them were in the same position. The crowd gasped. Lu Ming was really audacious. If he had accidentally hit the disciple of the Heaven Martial Sword faction just now, it was completely intentional. He was not afraid of the disciple at all. In the crowd, the law enforcement soldiers who came with Lu Ming broke out in cold sweat. They had caused a huge mess. They sighed in their hearts. The remaining disciple of the Sky Martial Sword faction was shocked. Lu Ming's combat strength was too terrifying. With just a simple move, he had killed a fellow disciple who had a similar combat strength to him. He did not dare to make a move at all. "Kid, how dare you hit the heaven's favorite of the Heavenly Sword faction? You're dead. Not only you, but the force behind you and your family are all dead. They'll all be annihilated. Just you wait. You're just a mere law enforcement army, you lowly thing. Just you wait." The remaining disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction shouted ferociously, then turned around and wanted to leave. "Did I let you go?" Lu Ming said calmly. The disciple of the Sky Martial Sword faction froze. He looked at Lu Ming and said, "You. What do you mean by that?" He was about to leave and Lu Ming still wanted to pursue the matter. "Nonsense. You want to just walk away after killing someone in my territory? Who do you think I am? What's the law enforcement army?" Lu Ming shouted and stepped forward. "You. Don't come over, I'm telling you, you're dead." The remaining disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction shouted. However, when they saw Lu Ming approaching them, they were so frightened that they trembled all over and could not even speak properly. "Who?" Lu Ming kicked him directly. Dragon Emperor's Myriad Journeys. Chapter 1105. 1105. If Lu Shaoqing can do it, so can I. This kick was as fast as lightning. Before the other party could react, Lu Ming had already kicked him in the stomach. He flew out screaming and lined up with the other two people before him. He lay there, looking like a dog eating shit. "Ah, you bastard. You're dead. The elder of the Heavenly Sword faction and Wu Chengkong and Wu Kang are here. They're not far away. The news will spread soon. You're dead." One of the disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction shouted and threatened Lu Ming. Bang! Lu Ming strode over and left a footprint on his face, causing his face to rub against the ground. Wu Chengkong and Wu Kang? They were killed by Lu Shaoqing in the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. If not for the Destiny Talisman, they would have died long ago. I'll wait here for these two pieces of trash to come. If Lu Shaoqing can kill them, I can kill them too. Lu Ming lowered his head and looked down at the three disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction. His cold voice spread throughout the entire area. Everyone was stunned. This commander was too awesome. He was actually waiting for Wu Chengkong and Wu Kang to kill the elites like Lu Shaoqing. Lu Shaoqing was a peerless heaven's favorite, an existence comparable to the five magnates. How could you, the law enforcement army, compare to him? However, he had to admire Lu Ming's courage. Lu Ming stepped on the face of the disciple of the Sky Martial Sword faction and waited. The other two disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction lay there, not daring to say a word for fear of being trampled on. However, they hated Lu Ming to the core and wished they could tear him into pieces. Tai Xing and the others broke out in cold sweat. Tai Xing quietly walked to Lu Ming's side and said, "Commander, wasn't this too much? What if the experts from the Sky Martial Sword faction come? What are you afraid of? We're from the Law Enforcement Hall, and we enforce the law on behalf of the Sage Emperor. What's there to be afraid of?" Lu Ming said casually. Tai Xing and the rest were speechless. They could only brace them sleevers and wait with Lu Ming. What happened here also spread like a whirlwind. What? There was such a thing. There's such an awesome commander. Let's go and take a look. When many people heard the news, they didn't believe it at first. Then, they were extremely curious and wanted to go and see. Many disciples and geniuses of the Overlord forces were shocked when they heard the news. In the past few years, the power of the royal family had been deteriorating, and the law enforcement army was like an empty name. The geniuses and disciples of the Overlord forces could do whatever they wanted in the Holy City. The law enforcement army did not dare to control them and tried to curry favor with them. Now, someone actually dared to beat up the Heaven's Martial Sword School's prodigy. This piqued the curiosity of many people, and they all rushed over to watch. In the 8th Prince's residence, Xiezhen was drinking tea in the courtyard when Shizheng rushed in. "Guardsha, what's the rush?" Xiezhen asked. "8th Prince, it's about that Ming Lu. Shi Zheng said. Oh, that blind guy, is he dead? Even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be able to live on. Mph, you dare to injure this prince, you really don't have eyes, you dog. Xie Zhen took a sip of tea and slowly said. He's not dead. That guy is really audacious. Huang Ku from the Huang family killed someone some time ago, and he actually crippled Huang Ku's cultivation, Shi Zheng answered. Hey! He destroyed Huang Ku's cultivation? The Huang family didn't come to kill that Ming Lu? Xie Zhen asked curiously. Of course they went. A spirit god expert, an old monster with a perfect spirit embryo, and even the commander of the law enforcement army, Shi Zheng said. Oh, in that case, is Ming Lu still alive? Xie Zhen was a little curious. In his opinion, in such a situation, Ming Lu should have been killed by the Huang family's spiritual god. No, that Ming Lu's combat strength is astonishing. He was actually able to block the spiritual god's attack and even used the carelessness of a saint emperor. Shi Zheng briefly explained what happened last time. Damn it, this Ming Lu actually has such a cultivation, and he even used the name of my imperial family. He's lucky to have escaped this disaster. After Xie Zhen heard this, his expression turned ugly and he was very unhappy. You just rushed here and said it was because of Ming Lu. What happened to him? He's dead for sure this time. He actually beat up a disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. Shi Zheng told him about how Lu Ming had injured the disciples of the Heavenly Sword faction, and how he was now waiting for the experts of the faction. This Ming Lu is really bold. Haha, let's see how he dies this time. Let's go, we can't miss such a good show. Let's go and take a look. Xie Zhen got up excitedly and rushed over with Shi Zheng. In the northeast of the sacred city, in front of the restaurant, Lu Ming was stepping on the face of a disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction, waiting quietly. In the sky, more and more people came, filling the sky. Wu Kang is here. A loud cry rang out, shaking the entire place. In one direction, many people opened up a path. In the sky over there, two figures stepped through the air. One of them was the second-grade Heaven's favorite of the Heavenly Sword faction, Wu Kang. Shi Fang was following behind Wu Kang. Lu Ming was slightly stunned. Then, he realized that Shi Fang must have informed Wu Kang. In fact, it was true. The moment Shi Fang heard that Lu Ming had injured a disciple of the Heavenly Sword faction, he knew that his chance had come. He had always wanted to befriend a Heaven's favorite like Wu Kang, but he never had the chance. Now, the chance to please him had come. Without hesitation, he rushed to Wu Kang's residence and passed on the news to him. As expected, Wu Kang was furious and came to kill him. Wu Kang walked very slowly, one step at a time. With every step he took, the sky buzzed and shook as if it couldn't withstand Wu Kang's anger. Wu Kang's eyes were filled with killing intent and his voice was cold. Bastards of the law enforcement hall, how dare you injure the disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction? Good, very good. You're alone. What about Wu Chengkong? I heard that you and your senior brother were beaten up by Lu Shaoqing. I'm going to learn from Lu Shaoqing and beat you up. It's a pity that you're the only one. Lu Ming cast a casual glance at Wu Kang and said indifferently. The crowd was stunned. This commander was too awesome, right? Was Wu Kang not enough? He wanted to learn from Lu Shaoqing and beat up Wu Chengkong and Wu Kang? Who did he think he was? Wu Kang was a second-class world and was famous all over the world. His cultivation had already reached the spiritual god realm. Such a Heaven's Pride expert's combat strength was not something that ordinary spiritual god realm powerhouses could compare to. Back then, Lu Ming was able to block a move from the Huang family's spiritual god. Did he really think that he could compete with such a Heaven's Pride expert? He was too naive. Many people shook their heads, thinking that this overpowered commander would die today. Tai Xing and the rest had ugly expressions on their faces. They did not dare to say a word and could only stand behind Lu Ming with gritted teeth. He had no choice. In such a situation, he could only hold on. Then I'll see how you're going to beat him up. Wu Kang laughed out of anger and stepped forward. Boom. Heaven and earth trembled, and the sword power was vast. The sword qi stirred the wind and clouds. A terrible light was emitted from Wu Kang's body. Every light was like a sword qi. The sword qi was endless. Chapter 1106. 1106 Chapter 1106 Suppressing Wu Kang. Those who had never seen a second-grade Heaven's Favorite in action were shocked. Was this what a second-grade Heaven's Favorite was? The power was too terrifying. Many people retreated in a frenzy, afraid of being touched by Wu Kang's sword. A Heaven's Pride expert like him could kill experts of the same level with his sword's sharpness alone. This commander is dead for sure. Seeing Wu Kang's power, many people sighed. Wu Kang was so powerful. What could Lu Ming use to block him? Die! Die! Wu Kang shouted coldly. His palm was like a sword. Light burst forth and formed a dazzling sword ray that slashed toward Lu Ming. As the sword radiance slashed, even the space was torn apart, revealing a terrifying, pitch-black spatial rift. This. Not good, quickly dodge. Behind Lu Ming, Taixing and the rest were terrified. Faced with such a powerful sword, they felt that it was impossible to resist. If they resisted, they would only die. They shouted and wanted to retreat, but they found that their bodies were covered by a terrifying sword power, and they couldn't move. It's over, it's over. I've finally been killed by this unreliable commander, a thought flashed through the minds of Taixing and the others. However, at this moment, they saw a long spear condensed in Lu Ming's hands. The long spear shook and hummed. Even the space trembled. At this moment, Taixing and the others realized that the sword power that enveloped them had disappeared. They had regained their freedom. Buzz. Then, they saw Lu Ming holding a long spear and sweeping it out. This spear was like a long spear sweeping across the surface of water. This was because wherever the long spear passed, layers of ripples would appear in the space. Moreover, these ripples would all gather on the long spear. Bang! The long spear and the sword radiance collided. Only a soft sound was heard before Wu Kang's sword radiance was destroyed. He blocked it. Taixing and the others were stunned. The surrounding onlookers were also stunned. This awesome commander could actually block Wu Kang's move. When did a commander of the law enforcement army become so powerful? A bunch of questions flashed through everyone's mind. Wu Kang was also stunned. Apparently, he did not expect that a law enforcement soldier could block his attack. Although he did not use his full strength, he still felt embarrassed. Who was he? A second-grade Heaven's Favorite whose name shook the central continent, an existence second only to the top 5 young men, couldn't take down a mere commander of the law enforcement army with one move? This made him burst out with even stronger and burning killing intent. Good, very good. You do have some ability. But today, your end is already decided. Die. Wu Kang shouted coldly. The sword qi around his body became even hotter. Vital essence gushed out continuously and finally turned into a sword qi that was several times more terrifying than before. It slashed toward Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming still swept out his spear casually and destroyed Wu Kang's sword aura, turning it into nothing. Show me your true ability, or it won't be enough. Lu Ming looked at Wu Kang from the corner of his eyes. Damn it! Wu Kang shouted and unsheathed his sword. The sword radiance was so bright that it seemed like it was going to split the heaven and earth. Kill. Wu Kang wielded his combat sword with terrifying might. As he slashed out with his combat sword, the space around him shattered. Heavens, he's too strong. Wu Kang is furious. He's too terrifying. Retreat. Retreat. Many people shouted and retreated madly again. Who? Lu Ming held the spear in one hand. The long spear in his hand slashed violently and turned into 1,000 meters long. It swept out in a brutal manner. With a bang, Wu Kang's sword aura was shattered again. However, this time, Lu Ming did not stop. The terrifying giant spear continued to press down on Wu Kang. Impossible! Impossible! Wu Kang shouted in disbelief. He had already performed a divine-level martial arts technique, but he was still defeated by Lu Ming's spear. How was this possible? He could not believe it. What he could not stand the most was that he felt a strong sense of danger when Lu Ming swept his spear at him. How could a mere law enforcement army, which was as insignificant as an ant, have such a powerful expert? Burst, burst, die. He roared in his heart and activated his divine bloodline. He merged his bloodline and turned it into a sword with shocking sword chi. Suppress. Lu Ming stepped into the air. His long spear contained the power of the prison-suppressing heaven technique. He changed the momentum of the spear and smashed it down at Wu Kang. Clang. The long spear hit the combat sword that Wu Kang had transformed into. The attack launched by the combat sword was instantly destroyed. The combat sword shook violently and finally exploded with a bang. The combat sword exploded, revealing Wu Kang's body. His face was pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Everyone in the surroundings looked at this scene in disbelief. Wu Kang was defeated. Wu Kang was actually defeated by Lu Ming's spear. How was this possible? What was going on? Was he still a commander of the law enforcement army? How could he be so powerful? Those who had thought that Lu Ming was dead for sure almost bit off their tongues and glared at him until their eyes burst. It was too unbelievable. As for Shi Fang, he thought he was dreaming. Wasn't Minglu only at the 7th level of the spirit embryo realm? Wasn't he just a disciple of the Black Spear sect? How could he be so strong? His body trembled in disbelief. As for Tai Xing and the others, they were completely petrified. The 3 disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction were also petrified, staring at the sky in a daze. How weak. I was wondering how strong a second-grade Heaven's favorite of the Heavenly Sword faction would be. Lu Ming pursed his lips, his face full of disdain. Wu Kang was furious. He was so furious that he wanted to roar at the sky. In the past, he was terrifyingly talented and powerful. In the Heavenly Sword faction, only Wu Chengkong could beat him. Even in the Battle of Karmic Luck, he had not lost too badly. But recently, he was first killed by Lu Shaoqing in the secret realm of the Saint Mansion. If not for the life talisman, he would not have been able to keep his life. Now, he was actually defeated by a mere commander of the law enforcement army. This was a great humiliation. From now on, his name, Wu Kang, would become a laughingstock and his reputation would be greatly reduced. How could he not be angry and hate her? If he knew that Lu Shaoqing and the commander of the law enforcement army were the same person, what would he think? Bastard, just you wait. You're dead. Wu Kang roared and retreated. Since you're here, where do you want to go? Have a good rest with your junior brothers. Lu Ming took a step forward. His body was like a stream of light and he rushed in front of Wu Kang in a few moments. Don't you dare! Wu Kang roared. Lu Ming actually wanted to suppress him and let him lie there like the other disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. How dare he? He was the second Heaven's Pride expert of the Heavenly Sword faction. He was completely different from the other Heaven's Pride experts. Suppress. Lu Ming's eyes were cold as he stepped in the air. The power of the 9 dragons' heaven stomping steps burst out. He took 7 consecutive steps toward Wu Kang. Bang! 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 Wu Kang's body trembled violently. He was injured and could not withstand the impact. His body shook violently and blood spurted out of his mouth. In the end, Lu Ming stepped on his face. He screamed and fell to the ground. He came into close contact with the ground and created a human-shaped pit. Chapter 1107. 1107. The Elder of the Heavenly Sword faction takes action. Bang! Lu Ming's body fell and he stepped on Wu Kang again, causing him to scream in pain. His cultivation was completely sealed by Lu Ming and he could not exert any strength. The crowd gasped. The commander of the law enforcement army was too ruthless. He even dared to suppress Wu Kang. How overbearing. Lu Ming grabbed Wu Kang and threw him to the side of the other 3 disciples of the Sky Martial Sword faction. The 3 disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction looked at each other and then at Wu Kang, who was standing at the side. Their expressions were very interesting. Initially, they were suppressed by Lu Ming and were lying on the ground like dogs eating shit. They felt extremely humiliated. However, when they saw Wu Kang lying on the ground, they felt much better. Even a Heaven's Pride expert like Wu Kang was suppressed and laid on the ground. It made sense that they were lying on the ground. Ah! Wu Kang howled like a wild beast. He was so angry, especially when he saw the strange looks from the people around him. He wanted to kill himself. Of course, he was only thinking about it. How could he bear to die? He had a great future ahead of him. Where are you going? At this moment, Lu Ming's gaze was fixed on a person in the sky not far away. That person was Shifang. When he saw that even Wu Kang was suppressed, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He was about to sneak away when Lu Ming saw him. His face revealed a smile that was uglier than crying, and said, "Minglu, you. What are you trying to do? What do you want? You're an Imperial Dragon Guard, but you actually brought people from the Heavenly Martial Sword sect to deal with the Law Enforcement Hall. You're a traitor, and you're colluding with foreign enemies. What do you think I'm doing?" Lu Ming sneered. His essential core exploded and he grabbed at Shifang in the air. What? Shifang was shocked. He wanted to retreat, but he felt a terrible force envelop him. He couldn't move. The next moment, a force pulled him down and he fell to the ground. "Ah, don't!" he screamed. Bang! Lu Ming lifted his leg and stomped on Shifang's dantian. Shifang arched his body like a big shrimp and let out a heart-wrenching scream. My cultivation, you've destroyed my cultivation." Shifang let out a desperate roar. The spirit embryo in his dantian was crushed by Lu Ming. "I'll cripple your cultivation as punishment. Get lost." With that, he kicked and Shifang flew out like a ball. He turned into a black dot and disappeared in the air. Lu Ming did not know how far he had flown. He could not be bothered to think about whether he would fall to his death. "All right, not a bad harvest. What are you guys doing? Bring them all back to the Law Enforcement Hall." Lu Ming looked at Tai Xing and the rest. Bring him back to the Law Enforcement Hall?" Tai Xing and the others looked at each other, their expressions ugly. "Of course, only by bringing them back will we have the capital to negotiate with them. Do you think that the Heavenly Martial Sword faction will let this matter rest if you let them go? Don't just stand there, take them away." Lu Ming waved his hand and grabbed Wu Kang. He stepped into the air and headed toward the Law Enforcement Hall. Tai Xing and the rest were helpless. They could only bring the other 3 disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction and follow Lu Ming. There's going to be a great show. This matter will definitely attract the elders of the Heavenly Martial Sword School. Let's go and take a look. This commander is indeed powerful. However, let's see how he's going to deal with the elder generation of the Heavenly Sword faction. Let's go and take a look. There were tens of thousands of people in the surrounding crowd. They followed Lu Ming from a distance and headed towards the Law Enforcement Hall. Furthermore, the number of people was increasing. Not long after Lu Ming and the rest left, Xiezhen and Shi Zhang rushed over. When they heard that Wu Kang was suppressed by Lu Ming, the 2 of them were dumbfounded and in disbelief. Initially, they were certain that Wu Kang would beat Lu Ming to a pulp or even kill him on the spot. They did not expect that the outcome would be the complete opposite of what they had expected. To the Law Enforcement Hall. Xiezhen brought Shi Zheng and hurried to the Law Enforcement Hall. When Lu Ming and the rest brought Wu Kang and the rest back to the Law Enforcement Hall, the remaining law enforcement soldiers were stunned. Then, their eyes were filled with fear. Lu Ming had actually suppressed the disciples of the Heaven Martial Sword faction and even Wu Kang. This was a huge blow to the heavens. How were they going to deal with the elders of the Heaven Martial Sword faction who would go crazy in the future? "We're the law enforcement army, enforcing the law on behalf of the Sage Emperor. What are we afraid of? Follow my arrangements and get to work." Lu Ming shouted and then instructed Tai Xing and the rest. As for Lu Ming, he threw Wu Kang and the others on the ground in a row. He took out an armchair and sat there, closing his eyes to rest. The onlookers looked at each other. This commander of the law enforcement army was really bold. At this moment, he was actually so leisurely sitting on the armchair with his eyes closed. The sky above the law enforcement hall was filled with people, and as time passed, more and more people appeared. This time, it was different from the previous time. This time, it was against the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. Furthermore, a second-grade Heaven's favorite had been suppressed. This caused a huge commotion, and many people were shocked and rushed over to watch. Xiezhen and Shizheng had arrived. There were even second-grade Heaven's favorites from other Overlord forces. Everyone saw Jing Kongling, Kong Xin, and Goddess Tan Xiong. There were also Shui Luozi, Yin Bupo, and so on. There were at least 7 to 8 people. The elites were shocked to see Lu Ming sitting on the armchair with his eyes closed. Wu Kang was as famous as they were, but this unassuming commander of the law enforcement army was so powerful that he could suppress Wu Kang. This shocked them. The royal family of the ancient Saint dynasty is indeed powerful. Even a commander of the law enforcement army is so powerful. Some people thought to themselves. All of a sudden, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky. Everyone felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their bodies. There was a chi activity that let out a terrifying roar. Under the pressure, the crowd took the initiative to open up a path. 3 old men stepped through the air with gloomy expressions. These 3 elders were all dressed in white robes and carried ancient swords on their backs. Their bodies seemed to be filled with endless sword chi, and just their auras were extremely shocking. It's here. Everyone's heart trembled. The elders of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction were on the move. At this moment, Lu Ming also opened his eyes and looked at the sky. The 3 powerhouses of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction flew over and finally stopped in the sky above the law enforcement hall. Bastard, you're finished. You're dead. Haha, you're dead. Wu Kang saw the arrival of the 3 old men and cried out in joy. Bang! Lu Ming got up and stomped on Wu Kang's face, causing his face to smash heavily on the ground. He took a bite of the soil and struggled madly with his limbs. He was so aggrieved that he was about to explode. The onlookers shuddered in their hearts. Lu Ming actually dared to do this in the face of 3 seniors from the Heavenly Martial Sword faction. He was simply lawless. The 3 elders' gazes were as sharp as swords as they landed on Lu Ming. How audacious! An old man shouted angrily, his eyes extremely gloomy as he rebuked, "Kid, do you know who you've captured? Aren't they just a few pieces of trash from the Heavenly Martial Sword faction? Why? Do you think it's a glorious thing to raise a few pieces of trash?" Lu Ming pursed his lips and said casually. He appeared to be very calm, as if he didn't care about the elders of the Heavenly Martial Sword sect. Chapter 1108. 1108 Extorting the Heavenly Sword Sect. Impudent. How audacious. He should be killed. The 3 elders of the Heavenly Sword faction shouted one after another. Their eyes were cold, and their bodies were filled with sword chi and sword power. Haha, he really brought this upon himself. This lowly thing is dead for sure. In the air, the 8th prince, Xiezhen, sneered. Brat, you and everyone else in the law enforcement hall should commit suicide. I'll let this matter go. Otherwise, not only you, but your family and the forces behind you will not be able to escape punishment. The old man who had spoken first continued to speak, his tone filled with superiority and unquestionable authority. His gaze swept across Tai Xing and the others, causing their hearts to turn cold and their faces to turn ashen. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Lu Ming laughed and stomped his foot on Wu Kang's face, causing him to scream in pain. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he looked coldly at the old man from the Heavenly Sword faction. Guilty. Not pursue the matter. What a joke. What right do you have to pursue this? We're the ones who should be held accountable. A disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction killed someone in the sacred city for no reason. We, the law enforcement army, enforce the law impartially and represent the current Saint Emperor in enforcing the law. Yet, your Heavenly Martial Sword faction has come to the law enforcement hall to kill. Not putting the current Sage Emperor in his eyes. Do you really think that there's no one else in the royal family? The elder from the Heavenly Martial Sword faction was shocked when he heard that. He looked at Wu Kang, who was still at Lu Ming's feet, and his expression turned ugly. Lu Ming had used the royal family and the sage emperor to suppress them. Even if they really did not care about the royal family, they could not say it out loud. After all, the ancient Saint dynasty was still in charge of the world. Furthermore, they were still in the sacred city, within the core territory of the ancient Saint dynasty. No matter how arrogant the heavenly martial sword sect was, they had to be wary of them. "Brat, what do I have to do for you to let them go?" The old man who spoke first said coldly and glanced at Wu Kang and the others. Wu Kang, a second-class heaven's favorite, had the potential to become a martial emperor in the future. They could not afford to lose him. They planned to save Wu Kang first. Let them go. Fine, but since they have committed a crime, they should be punished. How about this? Use raw stones to redeem them. 500,000 raw stones for each of the 3 trash. 2 million raw stones it is. Lu Ming said indifferently. As soon as he said that, the entire place burst into an uproar. Extortion. This was blatant extortion. This puny commander of the law enforcement army actually dared to extort an expert from the heavenly martial sword faction. He was simply blinded by wealth and audacious. He didn't know what death was. The 3 elders of the heavenly martial sword faction were also infuriated. Their eyes even turned red. Even though they had lived for thousands of years, they had never met such a bold person. To think that he would try to extort them, the heavenly martial sword faction. He was simply courting death. "Evil beast, I'll kill you." The elder who spoke first was so angry that he could not hold it in any longer. With a long howl, a terrifying sword chi condensed and slashed towards Lu Ming. 4th level of the spiritual god realm. The old man who attacked was a 4th-level spiritual god realm expert. His combat strength was several times stronger than Wu Kang's. Lu Ming's glabella glowed and a small fiery red pagoda appeared. Then, it rapidly grew in size. This small pagoda was the spirit weapon that Lu Ming had obtained from the Saint Mansion's secret realm. After so many days of refinement, Lu Ming had already begun to refine it. The aura of the spirit weapon had also been completely concealed, and outsiders could not sense it at all. Lu Ming wanted to take this opportunity to test the power of the small pagoda. Anyway, there were countless tower-shaped spirit weapons in the world. Lu Ming was not afraid of being recognized. He just had to restrain his aura. Lu Ming grabbed the tower and smashed it at the sword gleam. With a loud boom, the sword gleam was destroyed. Lu Ming's body did not even move. The Emperor spiritual weapon consumes too much true yuan. I really can't use much of its power, Lu Ming muttered in his heart. He had consumed a large amount of essential core just now. Even a martial emperor would be envious of an emperor spiritual weapon, so it was normal for him to be unable to unleash its power. He muttered as he put away the small pagoda. He was not satisfied, but the others were already shocked. Lu Ming could even block the attack of a 4th-level spiritual god realm expert. He was too powerful. At this moment, Lu Ming was simply unfathomable in everyone's eyes. Every time others thought that he had reached his limit, the strength he revealed was beyond everyone's imagination. You're just a mere law enforcement army. Your treasures are good, but let's see how many moves you can block with just your treasures. The elder from the Heavenly Martial Sword School shouted in anger, and his aura became even more astonishing. A sword light shot up 10,000 meters into the sky, and the sword power was vast and terrifying. If the tiger doesn't show its might, it'll think I'm a sick cat. Kill. Lu Ming shouted as a long spear condensed in his hand. He pierced it through one of the disciples of the Sky Martial Sword School. The disciple of the Heavenly Martial Sword faction screamed in pain as he was pinned to the ground by Lu Ming. Lu Ming had told them in a thunderous manner that they should not think that he would not dare to kill. Give me the Ori rocks to redeem them. Otherwise, I'll kill them all. Lu Ming's voice was very cold. Lu Ming would not miss such a good opportunity to extort money. Cultivating by purely absorbing the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth was too slow. After such a long time, Lu Ming's current cultivation was only at the middle stage of the 2nd level of the spiritual god realm. If he had a large number of origin stones to devour, his cultivation would improve rapidly. He was currently lacking resources. In half a month's time, the million-year national sacrifice would begin. The competitions set by the Sage Emperor would also begin. Lu Ming's goal was to get into the top 3. The Sage Emperor could agree to one condition for the top 3. However, it wasn't that easy to get into the top 3. When Yang Potian and Tuoba Shi were in the Saint Mansion's secret realm, their cultivation had already reached the peak of the second level of the spiritual god realm. Now that a period of time had passed, it was very possible that they would make a breakthrough. If a heaven's favorite like Yang Potian had reached the third level of the spiritual god realm, it would be more troublesome for him to defeat him. Moreover, there were 5 such heaven's favorites in the central continent and also the southern underworld. It would not be easy for the heaven's favorites from the western desert to get into the top 3. However, if Lu Ming's cultivation also broke through to the third level of the spiritual god realm, he would have full confidence. How audacious! Evil creature, you're looking for death. Kill. Lu Ming's killing of a disciple from the heavenly martial sword faction had thoroughly enraged the 3 elders. A terrifying aura burst forth, and sword chi soared into the sky. The murderous intent was extremely cold, as if winter had arrived. The other 2 elders' auras were even more terrifying. They were stronger than the elder who had attacked earlier and definitely surpassed the 4th level of the spiritual god realm. If such experts wanted to join forces, their auras would be too shocking. Law enforcement flag, please. Lu Ming suddenly shouted. The law enforcement flag is here. In the law enforcement hall, Tai Xing carried a large flag and rushed out. Lu Ming took it and stuck it into the ground. It was a 10-meter-long flag with a sword and a saber embroidered on it. They were extremely sharp, as if they were real swords. However, the flag looked very old and was even covered in dust. One look and one could tell that it had not been used for a long time. But as soon as this flag appeared, the chi of the 3 elders from the heavenly martial sword sect in the sky suddenly stagnated. They didn't attack, but looked at the flag with uncertain expressions. Chapter 1109. 1109 If you want to kill me, kill the 8th prince first. It's the flag of law enforcement. The flag of law enforcement. The law enforcement flag created by the ancient Saint Emperor in the ancient times. The crowd began to discuss, and many people's eyes were solemn. The flag of law enforcement was created in the ancient era when the ancient Saint Emperor established the law enforcement army. It was used to enforce the law in the world. 30,000 years ago, wherever the law enforcement flag passed, no one wasn't terrified. Its deterrent force was monstrous. However, after the war 30,000 years ago, the ancient Saint dynasty was weakened and the law enforcement army was useless. The law enforcement flag lost its power and it had been many years since anyone used the law enforcement flag. However, at this moment, the appearance of the law enforcement flag still made people's hearts tremble. Do you think you can stop us by taking out the law enforcement flag? You're really naive. You'll die today. An elder shouted and stepped forward. With every step, sword chi filled the air and cut open the space. This was an existence that surpassed the 4th level of the spiritual god realm, or even beyond the 5th level of the spiritual god realm. He was too powerful. How dare you? The flag of law enforcement is here. We are the law enforcement army. By setting up the flag of law enforcement, we represent the ancient Saint dynasty, the royal family, and the Saint Emperor. The heavenly martial sword sect is completely disrespecting the royal family and the Saint Emperor. Is the heavenly martial sword sect trying to rebel? Are you trying to destroy the royal family and replace the Xie clan? Lu Ming stood up straight and pointed the long spear in his palm at Wu Kang's back. He shouted loudly. His words swept through the entire area like a storm, causing the 3 elders of the heavenly martial sword school to look extremely grim. Lu Ming had made a big mistake. He directly accused them of wanting to rebel and destroy the imperial family and the Xie family. Although the heavenly martial sword faction really had such thoughts, could they say such things out loud? Moreover, the heavenly martial sword sect didn't have the strength to do so. Tianwu sword faction, you have the ambition of a wolf. You look down on the imperial family and the imperial power. Today, the 8th prince is here, and you want to rebel in front of him, Look down on the imperial power and the Xie family. How could the 8th prince tolerate you? At the end of his sentence, Lu Ming cast his gaze at Xie Zhen. Lu Ming had long discovered Xie Zhen. The other people also looked at the 8th prince. Xie Zhen's face fell and he cursed Lu Ming 1,000 times in his heart. Lu Ming was using him as a shield. But what could he do in this situation? Lu Ming took out the flag of law enforcement. The flag of law enforcement was created by the ancient sacred emperor back then. His ancestor was equivalent to the face of the royal Xie family. Lu Ming was a member of the law enforcement army, and he enforced the law on behalf of the sage emperor. If the heavenly martial sword sect were to make a move on Lu Ming, or even kill him, it would be a slap to the face of the imperial family and the Xie family. To put it more seriously, it would be a rebellion. Under such circumstances, Lu Ming had dragged him down with him again. If Xie Zhen ignored him in front of everyone, he would not be able to bear the consequences if this news spread to the royal family, the Xie family, and even the sage emperor. Moreover, there were more than a dozen princes, and they were not very harmonious. They fought openly and secretly. If he did not handle it well today and embarrassed the royal family, the other princes might use this to attack him. At the thought of this, Xie Zhen gritted his teeth. He could not wait to cut Lu Ming. 8th prince, am I wrong? Lu Ming continued to ask. Well said. In the end, Xie Zhen gritted his teeth and descended from the sky. He stood beside Lu Ming and faced the 3 elders from the Heaven Martial Sword sect. He said unwillingly, this time, Commander Ming Lu is right. This time, it was the disciples of the Heavenly Martial Sword sect who committed the crime first. The law enforcement army will handle it impartially and protect the face of our imperial family. After he finished speaking, Xie Zhen's heart felt even more disgusted than if he had eaten a dead rat. He was aggrieved. He was simply too aggrieved. What was his purpose in transferring Lu Ming to the law enforcement army? Wasn't it to let Lu Ming offend the people from the big forces and be killed by the powerful people from the big forces with one slap? But now, he had achieved the initial effect, but the later stage was completely different from what he had expected. Not only was Lu Ming not killed, but he even had to step in personally to protect Lu Ming. What the hell is this? He was aggrieved. He hated Lu Ming so much that he gritted his teeth and almost broke them. The 8th prince is right. He is indeed an outstanding talent of the royal family. If you 3 old fogies want to kill me today, you will have to step over the 8th prince's dead body first. Come on, come at me if you have the ability, Lu Ming clamored. Xie Zhen almost spat out a mouthful of blood. What did he mean by if you want to kill him, you have to step over the 8th prince's dead body? Xie Zhen was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he could not back down at this moment. He could only grit his teeth and stare at the 3 elders from the Heavenly Sword faction. In the eyes of others, Xie Zhen had a kind of righteous and fearless spirit. They did not know that it was all because he was angered by Lu Ming. The 3 elders from the Heavenly Martial Sword faction looked gloomy and unsightly. The 8th prince, Xie Zhen, was not like Lu Ming, who could be killed easily. Xie Zhen was the current Saint Emperor's son, and they were in the Holy City. If they really dared to kill Xie Zhen in front of everyone, it would definitely cause the imperial family's Xie clan to take revenge, and they could forget about leaving the Holy City. In the crowd, there were also many law enforcement soldiers who had come from other law enforcement halls to watch the show. At this time, their blood was boiling, and their hearts were extremely comfortable. All these years, the people of the law enforcement army had been too cowardly and aggrieved. He lived worse than a dog. When those people from the major forces committed a crime, they still had to take raw stones and treasures out to ask the other party to admit their mistakes. How were they going to live their days? Now, when they saw this scene, they really had a feeling of exultation. It was really too good. Law enforcement army, law enforcement flag, the current Saint Emperor will enforce the law. One of the burly men roared as he stepped into the air. A large flag suddenly appeared in his hand. Law enforcement flag. At this moment, another law enforcement soldier from the law enforcement hall held a law enforcement flag and stuck it beside Lu Ming's flag. He stood beside Lu Ming. The law-enforcing army is the law-enforcing army on behalf of the sage emperor, the law-enforcing army. Another group of people shouted and rushed out, standing behind the burly man. They were all from another law enforcement hall, and there were more than 100 of them. Haha, that's right, the law enforcement army. The current Saint Emperor will enforce the law. Another person laughed and rushed out. Another law enforcement flag appeared and was placed in a row with the first two. Haha, I'm here too. Law enforcement. With loud roars, law enforcement troops appeared one after another. Law enforcement flags appeared and were planted in a row. In the end, there were a total of 9 law enforcement flags, which were inserted in a row, fluttering in the wind. The law enforcement hall from all directions in the holy city had come. They took out their law enforcement flags and wanted to advance and retreat with Lu Ming and the rest. Nearly 1,000 people stood behind Lu Ming and Xiezhen, glaring at the 3 elders from the heavenly martial sword faction in the air. Usually, they would swallow their grievances, but today, they would risk it all. The surrounding crowd looked at this scene in shock. It had been many years since the 9 law enforcement flags were raised. Today, it was happening again because of Lu Ming. Now, let's see what the heavenly martial sword faction will do. Detestable. Xiezhen roared in his heart. However, in this situation, he could only hold on. The 3 elders from the heavenly martial sword faction had gloomy expressions. They had not expected that things would develop to this stage. Right now, they were in a dilemma. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,